Chris? Can you hear me, Chris? You're muted. Okay.
You hear me, Cheryl? You hear me,
Yeah.
Cheryl?
Yep, I hear you.
Hear me now?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I'll put you on mute later. I have us recording already. This makes my life easier to start it now. Do you guys have the agenda up? Because I added the presentation from Laura.
I will momentarily. Thank you.
I'm sure they'll put it on the screen on Zoom, but just so you know, it's there.
Thank you. I have this new handy dandy Chromebook.
Working out good?
So far, so good.
Good. Debbie, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you? Hi, everybody.
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm exhausted and exhilarated.
I like that.
Hi, everybody.
All right, John.
Hi, John.
Hey, John.
Hey, John.
Oh, Cheryl, is Perry ready to sign in?
Very good.
Barry's
Get in
on,
here.
Howard.
Okay.
Barry's on.
Oh, he's on a different screen. Okay. Because it's 7 o'clock, Perry.
Yep. All right. Let's get started. Pledge allegiance.
The
To
flag.
the flag, the United
United
States
States
of
of
America,
America, and to the
and to the
republic
republic for which it stands,
stands
one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty and justice for all.
for all.
All right. Well, I guess the way to kick this off is a little bit of inspiration. This is probably one of the most important meetings that I've been at. One of the most important decisions that I've been a part of as far as the school district is concerned. And I want to make it clear, the decision we have to make is, how does the year start? How does 2020, 2021 school year begin? Do we feel that day one we're safe enough? That we've understood, or at least we know how to get from here to there, whether it's hybrid, whether it's virtual? It's a very difficult decision, and I know it's a decision that no matter how we do it, it's going to be a decision that some people are going to be upset by, some people are going to be happy with, and then there'll probably be a group that's just sort of in the middle of the road. So the idea for tonight is to listen to Laura give us the readout of what they have found, what the information they've analyzed, the stuff that they've gathered from parents and teachers and surveys, the crew that worked so tirelessly to take all this apart into different areas. But it's our job as a Board of Education to listen to it, to make our concerns known, and then to come up with this is how we believe school should start. And the importance of it is, right now, no one has a definitive answer for, like, teachers don't know how, are they planning to be in the class? Are they planning to be home? Are they planning to be there part-time? We need to get our staff, whether it's teachers, we need to get our parents on board. Governor Cuomo has ordered that there be 3 parent meetings and 2 teacher meetings. To me, those are continuing information sharing meetings. A week ago, we said we're going to do this, and we've researched it and we realize we don't have this, or we're not ready with that. So this is our next step. So I hope that everybody is sort of on board with that. Like I said, this is not an easy decision by any stretch, and it's going to have wide effects on everybody in our district. So with that, let me go to the agenda so I don't make a big mess out of this. Okay. So with that, we've got a consent agenda, which I don't think, is there anything on consent? No. appoint maintenance helper, item number 2 under consent. Are these all supposed to be part of consent agenda, Cheryl?
Yes.
Oh, because when you look at the agenda, they don't have that asterisk in front of them.
Oh, sorry. That's my mistake. But yes, they are consent.
Okay, so first of all, does anyone have anything they want pulled off of the consent agenda? Okay. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda items?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks. Any discussion?
Yes. What items are part of the consent?
Items, appoint maintenance helper and appoint custodial worker.
Okay, thanks.
The two under B, John.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Very good. New business, we've got a donation from Rugies for the purpose of paying school lunch balances. Is this just sort of a donation to cover pieces of it, or is there a specific purpose behind it?
So Rugies reached out to us and shared that they would like to be able to donate $500 to pay down the debt owed by free and reduced priced eligible students.
Okay. Okay. All right, do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Other than,
Thank you to Ruby.
yeah,
Yes, thank you.
I mean, joining the community, that's fantastic.
It's really nice.
Anything else? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Okay. All right, now we really get into the heart of the purpose of this special edition Board of Ed meeting. And before I do that, I really want to say thank you to all of the Board of Ed members. You know, this is like the 3rd or 4th week in a row we've had a board meeting. You guys have been on all these committees. And I just want to thank all of the Board of Ed members for really going above and beyond to deal with COVID and the crisis. And it's been a long year. Well, actually probably about 18 months since we go back to the mold issues. So anyway, so with that, I'm going to ask Laura to take us through this presentation, which is intended to give us sort of the pros and cons, give us the information that's been collected, and then, lead to a discussion of board member sort of opinions or positions on going back to when we start school in September. How does it begin? So Laura, you want to start?
Good evening, Millbrook. Nice to see you all. As Perry said, we have a very important decision to make this evening. And it's a decision that will provide a clear direction to inform our next steps, knowing they could change overnight due to changing circumstances and guidance. The core and re-entry teams and subcommittees have worked hours in developing hybrid and remote models that had students at the heart of every decision. We know neither scenario is optimal. Optimal would be having our students, your children, here in school with us all day, every day. And unfortunately, that's not possible right now. Tonight, we, the core and reentry teams, are going to walk you through the reentry process, data collected from surveys, learning models, draft schedules across buildings, pros and cons of learning models, and next steps. We hope this information will be helpful in making the best decision for our students, staff, families, and community. We know we will not make everyone happy, just as Perry said, and I'm sorry for that. We're just trying to make the most of a terrible situation. So if Elliot, you could cue up the presentation, that would be awesome.
Cheryl, if you could make me give me the rights to co-present, I'll run the PowerPoint. Thank you.
Are you set, Elliot?
We can see it.
I'm all set. Go ahead, Laura.
Okay, so you can go to the next slide. So getting ready for reentry and the next slide. So this is all about our reentry planning. And this all began with creating a team system, a strength-based approach that uses expertise, passion, experience, and multiple lenses, our many stakeholders, to grapple with the very complex issues that come with the reopening of a school district during a pandemic. We first created a core team, and that was made up of Elliot, Caroline, Brian, and myself. We coordinated, synthesized, analyzed data, collected, answered questions, controlled the flow of information and communication. Then we created the reentry team, and that included the core team, plus our principals, plus Holly, our director of services, Mike Ragusa, director of facilities, and Debbie and Karen from First Student. All of these members were co-facilitators of the subcommittees. They scheduled meetings, facilitated conversations, documented data that was collected, and shared findings with the reentry core teams to inform next steps and the development of the reentry plan. We identified organizational areas of focus and created subcommittees around them. So our 6 subcommittees, if you can go to the, oh, you're on the third slide, sorry. I have like 4 screens going on. We identified organizational areas of focus and created subcommittees for each. So our subcommittees were transportation, food services, teaching and learning, special education and PPS, athletics and extracurricular activities, and social emotional. And their charge was to represent stakeholder voices and interest, provide input and feedback for key decisions in subcommittee focus areas, and inform re-entry and core team decision-making process. We created subcommittee support systems, and those included facilities, technology, health and safety, security, public relations and communication, and staffing. And they supported all of subcommittees. We thought separating them out into their own subcommittees didn't fit our purposes. They were more valuable being in those subcommittees that we had identified as areas of focus. Teams met, so then we activated our teams, and we met once a week for part of June and July. As we were walking through our subcommittees and having these conversations, we were always having our eye on the CDC, Department of Health, and NICED, because they were ever changing and ever evolving guidelines, requirements, and mandates. Can you go back? Thanks. These subcommittees made recommendations to the core and reentry teams. We continue to have ongoing updates for the board. So many of you have heard this process many times, but just for the families at home and our community. Had multiple parent communication, whether it's through school messenger, alerts, letters, updates. We also created a reentry plan website and posted our plan recently and submitted to the Department of Health for approval, which we have not heard yet from them. We've done a few parent surveys and submitted recommendations to the superintendent and the Board of Education, which is part of this evening. I did want to share that we have a fun fact here, that we had approximately 75 staff members involved in reentry planning, plus 5 Board of Education members and approximately 10 parents and guardians. Out of roughly 160 employees, that means that approximately 47% of our district staff has directly been involved in our reentry planning process. I think that's truly impressive, and I don't think you can find that in many districts, if any. So bravo to everybody, truly a team effort. So I thought it would be fun to show you what our last month and change has looked like. You can see we started this work June 16th and probably before this, as we were being bombarded with information and mandates and guidelines. And you can see all of the core team reentry. There's training, there are reentry team meetings, there are board meetings where there are updates, there are surveys there, and then there are pivotal times throughout that timeline when we were getting information from NICET, Department of Health, CDC, as well as executive orders. So it's been one crazy few weeks. And on top of the work that we do to start a school up. So again, it's kudos to the teams and everybody who's involved in this work. There's still more work to come, and I'll create another timeline when that happens. And I'm sure it'll be just as full as this one. So I'm going to leave the next slide is data survey information, and that's for Elliot Brian to explain.
Thanks, Laura, and good evening. So we sent out a survey to understand how our families were feeling about opening school in September, and we received about 483 responses. That first line graph just shares the schools that the respondents have children in. And the next pie chart shows that approximately 20% of the respondents have a child or a family member who have an underlying condition that would impact a family's decision to make regarding sending their child back to school. That next pie chart shows that if we opened on a hybrid model with appropriate social distancing, 77% of the respondents would send their children to school, 12% would not send their children to school, and about 11% would seek other educational alternatives rather than sending their children into school. The next pie chart shows that if we opened with all students, 45% of those responding would send their children without reservation. About an equal amount would send their children with reservations, and about 10% again would seek alternatives to our education. In the next pie chart, it just tried to get a feeling of how families would feel for remote learning if it continued into the fall. 34% said that they would want the same distance learning paradigm to continue. About 54% felt like there should be major formatting changes to the remote learning format. And again, 12.5% in this instance said that they would seek educational alternatives if remote learning were to continue. And this slide right here, this just shares the major concerns that our families are feeling as they contemplate the next school year. As you can see, these major concerns are listed: health and safety, social distancing, academic rigor. There was concerns about grading, certainly our kids needing more teacher interaction, concern about normal and everyday routines, a lot of concerns about masks and PPE, certainly the socialization that our children are or aren't experiencing, and of course, the emotional well-being of our kids in general and childcare.
I'll pick it up from here. Thank you, Brian. Part of my role was facilitating the teaching and learning group, and we looked at a bunch of learning models, right? So at its minimum, we knew there was going to be one of three things when we came back in September. We were either all going to come back together, we were going to all be home remote, or some sort of hybrid model in the middle. Knowing that we may have to pivot between them based on circumstances, right? I mean, just as quickly as we had to pivot from live instruction to remote instruction from March into April, we're anticipating and preparing to have to do that again, at some point in the next school year. So when we looked at hybrid models of instruction, what you see here listed is a categorical breakdown, but within the category, there were multiple iterations of what each hybrid could look like. So in total, we looked at over 6 different types of hybrid models. And you can see here, they're listed out for you. We looked at alternating cohort attendance schedules where we split our student population virtually in half. And we looked at every alteration from one group comes in Monday and Tuesday, everybody distance learns on Wednesday, and another group comes in Thursday, Friday. We looked at using our existing 6-day schedule where, one cohort comes in on odd days, one comes in on even days. We looked at alternating weekly and biweekly. Again, 2 groups, one comes in for a week, one comes in for 2 weeks. And the reason why we looked at the biweekly was to align ourselves with the CDC's recommendation for quarantine, right? So if we had alternating cohorts coming in on a 14-day cycle, should we have an exposure, there would be a natural quarantine, informal quarantine of 14 days where they would not be coming to campus. We also looked at split attendance models. Many districts across the country are looking at models where the younger children, so in our case, we looked at a K-5 model where our kindergarten to 5th grade students would come in every day, as well as our students with disabilities, grades 6 through 12. And we would have our general education students, grades 6 through 12, on a full-time remote learning. And then the last model we looked at was kind of a blend of the two, where we would have the K-8 students coming in every single day. And then our high school students would alternate. 9th and 10th grade would come in on an A schedule, and 11th and 12th would come in on a B schedule. After drilling down all the different hybrid models, there was general consensus across all 6 subcommittees that the most feasible to entertain and to go further into would be the one that's bolded here, the Monday, Tuesday A group, Wednesday distance learning for all, and Thursday, Friday being a B group. And then they would, so while the A students are receiving live instruction on campus, the B group students would be in distance learning, and then they would alternate for the other half of the week. So I will go to Caroline, and she will explain some of our sample schedules to you.
I actually thought this was for me, Elliot. That's all right.
Sorry, Tom.
All right. In elementary world, in an AABB format, you'll see the Monday and Tuesday are relatively the same. This is a sample of an A student going through, as I said, Monday, Tuesday the same. They come to school, going through the arrival protocols, have a morning meeting, which is part of our responsive classroom makeup, and that it gives the students a chance to connect and with classmates and get ready for their day. Core subjects of math, writing, and reading workshop, a lunch, and either social studies or science. Then we go through the protocols for dismissal, and then those students, when they arrive home, would key in or go to the Google Classroom for their special area classes, music, art, PE, and library, and in some cases band, after they get home. On Wednesday, those students, and all students, the A group and the B group, are taught at home. You'll see the morning meeting is still a big part of the day to start and get us on the same path. And then we go through our 4 core subjects at home with all students, A and B students. As we move to Thursday and Friday, this is the A group on Thursday, Friday. They would have instruction beginning again with morning meeting. It's followed by various support special area classes.
Hey, Tom?
Yes.
I'm just a little confused. So Monday and Tuesday is like, let's say, A group.
Yes.
And they're doing math and writing and reading. And then B group comes in on Thursday and Friday, and they do read aloud, social, emotional.
No, B group is getting the same, they're the in-person on Thursday, Friday. This is an A student through the whole week.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
They flip-flop, so Thursday, Friday.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, all right. So what happens then after they go through these various support and special area classes, there's finally a further instruction of each core subject that was taught to the B cohort on that day, earlier in the day. So the ELA, maths, social studies, and science. I think we missed writing in there. So, and then WIN is what we need, what I need for furthering my instruction, be it AIS, resource room or other things. And again, cohorts A and B will flip-flop Monday and Tuesday with Thursday, Friday. And this is what it looks like. It's somewhat all. Mike, do you have something to add, Mike Sotero?
No, thank you, Tom. I think that's a pretty detailed description. One thing we wanted to do is keep the availability of that small group work. So although in blue you see group A is in person, where obviously in a workshop model, the teacher could then work in small groups, we wanted to have that availability when A is at home, the back of the week on Thursday and Friday. And so that's built in a little bit too, with that end of the day check-in with ELA, math, social studies, and science, where a teacher can have some freedom there, I believe, to check in with small groups in those subject matter areas as well. So that these students, A group, are getting that face-to-face from their classroom teacher, as well as these other enrichment teachers, for lack of a better word, in the yellow. So whether they're in school Monday, Tuesday, or at home Thursday, Friday, they're seeing their classroom teacher every day, and they're also getting that whole enrichment piece on the Thursday with kind of the middle of the schedule in yellow.
Hey, John, Rudy, I have a question. So what happens to the remote, the parents that keeps their kids home? How do they, where do they fit in?
All right, good question. So so we're considering that, we're calling it the C group, the group that's home all the time. And those students would follow the pattern of, they'll follow the Thursday, Friday type schedule every day. And so they'll have that Thursday, Friday schedule on Monday and Tuesday. They'll be in the Wednesday, they'll have the large group instruction, and then Thursday, Friday schedule again. But where they're getting the core work for Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday is similar to what what you'll see on Thursday, Friday at the end of the day. There's a check-in with all students that are at home. And so they would get connected. They would connect with each of their classroom teachers daily as well.
We also have that element on Wednesday where you see there's the writing workshop and the readers workshop. And if you're familiar with that model, there's a large sort of mini lesson, but then it's broken down into smaller group conferencing, and which is kind of the body of a workshop. So they'll also be having that face-to-face small group checking in, show me what you're writing, show me what you're reading, let's talk about it. And that's something that will be part of their Wednesday day as well.
So there's a truncated version of the lessons that are happening in school that are going to be happening for the students in that what's listed after the Thursday, Friday lesson, where it says ELA, Math, Social Studies, Science, and WIN. That's going to be truncated versions of what's happening aligned to the day for the in-person student. So that will be happening every day, basically. And it's made that way because I'll talk about the pros and the cons of the hybrid and the remote models that we discussed. And one of the things that there was a concern about, and we'll talk about this, is with this particular model, we didn't decide in this presentation to talk about all the remote models, but with this particular model, because students were coming to school Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday, would there be a gap of 5 days in instruction for students, in terms of face-to-face? And the way that we've arranged this is all students would have contact with their teachers every day, essentially. So with that, we talked about aligning the at-home instruction for students with the face-to-face instruction as well. So that would be an opportunity for a student who wasn't coming to school at any time, say for medical reasons, to be able to be aligned with what's happening in the school every day, even if they weren't coming here.
And the point really is to, like, if a kid gets sick, because we've split the population in half, only half of our kids would get sick or be exposed, maybe is a better way to say it. Is that
well,
right?
and more so, to be able to prevent the likelihood of them getting sick in the first place, because we're able to create that space within the building, and we're able to just reduce the number of students in any given place at any given time.
Hey, Caroline, can I ask a question? The model that's up here now, is there any way that we can just stick with either they're in school for 2 days, and then the Wednesday, and then the other group is in Thursday and Friday, instead of confusing what if, you know, the model of their hybrid or they're all remote? I'm very confused right now.
Me too. I hate to say it.
I think we just need to stick with this is the model of them coming in 2 days, and then home 2 days, the other group comes in 2 days, and then talk about the hybrid, or I'm sorry, the complete remote, or however we're gonna do it. It's just very confusing.
Sure.
Back and forth.
But the other thing that makes this a little bit easier is that each student will get their schedule, and it won't have all the mishmash of all the other stuff on there. It'll just be their personalized schedule. And just trying to tell you all of what's going on. But a student would get a schedule that would follow with all the personalized approach.
And
So-
the teacher, would the teacher be in all 5 days, or for the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday? Or how is, and as they're teaching to kids in class, if there are kids on the phone list, or not on the phone, but you know what I mean? If there are remote kids, the teacher, we have the equipment to balance so the teacher can be seen and heard by the people at home, but she can still, or he can still move around the classroom.
Yeah, so we do believe that we can handle that. Yes, we spoke about that with the MTA yesterday. That basically the biggest need is for the students at home to be able to see the essentially source of instruction. So whether it's a smart board, and to be able to hear the teacher, and for them to be able to ask questions. So the teacher needs to be able to see the students at home should they have a question, to be able to hear them if they have a question, and for the students at home to be able to hear the teacher. So, you know, Elliot can really speak to how we are able to do that, because we do have some new information about our increased bandwidth within the district. So we do have some good information. We didn't believe that that was going to be possible, but because we do have an increase in our bandwidth available to the district, we actually have new possibilities to be able to provide additional synchronous instruction from within the district. So that's good news.
I can expand on that if you seems as good a time as any. So when we presented this, the last time I spoke to the board, we talked about a 10% capacity issue that maybe could be expanded to 20%. And that was a Dutchess County, county-wide regional estimation based on the bandwidth available that we subscribe to through BOCES. We've gone further down the road to explore Millbrook's specific bandwidth, and we've put in to double that with BOCES, and that's all of the superintendents in Dutchess County agreed to double the regional bandwidth capacity. And so for us, what that looks like is that that's going from 200 megs to 400 megs. And we've received information from Google as far as what Google Meet's requirements are, what Zoom's requirements are, and Microsoft Teams. They're all around 3 megs a session. What that means for us is that we estimate we can put roughly 50 teachers onto a synchronous live instructional session simultaneously. So with roughly 100 teachers in the district, we could put about half of our staff onto a synchronous session at one time. Where we were initially thinking it would be like a 10 or 15 number, knowing that it's up to 50, and being able to structure our on-campus cohorts in larger settings. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, I believe, just how we would space out the students on campus. We should have more than enough capacity to put our teachers on in real time for the students that are at home in whatever format we can work out.
And at some point, we'll make it clear to parents that this, you know, our support of this structure only covers your residents in Millbrook, in the Millbrook Central School District. You know, if they choose to go to grandma's house to ride this thing out in forgive me, Skinny Atlas, there's no guarantees. Right?
Well, yeah, I mean, at that point, they would be subjected to the bandwidth capacity of wherever they are, and that's going to be true
Yeah, that's
for all
what,
of our
yeah.
students. You know,
Yeah,
what some of the unforeseen issues is we may see our neighborhoods bogged down, right? As a, you know, Optimum or AT&T, whoever provides your ISP service, you know, there are going to be limitations. Our biggest concern is how much data we can send out and receive from campus, and that number just jumped from 10% to 50% in the last 5 days to our benefit.
Elliot, how about instructionally for the teachers? Like, would there be training for them to come in? We're asking if they can be teaching the students in front of them and Zooming or using another virtual learning tool simultaneously. So, do we have the technology equipment, and will the teachers be familiar or be able to do that at some point?
That's a great point, Paul. And whatever we do, and I think based on the guidance we get today, is going to help us fill in some of those details, right? And we're looking to have additional training. So for some of our folks that are less familiar with any sort of synchronous instruction, I mean, some folks used it a little bit in the spring, some did not. But we want to make that available to everybody and really train them up as they need to be. The good thing is we're going to lean into the technology we're already using in play. So we're going to use Google Meets, which is already a familiar product. You know, we're using our email system, using our chat functions. These are things that people already have put their hands on, some more than others. But yeah, absolutely. We're going to have resources available to train them up in the beginning of the year and then to provide constant support throughout the year. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
And just to be clear, so if you were a student assigned to the A group, what's on the screen would be your exact schedule Monday through Friday. If you had been assigned in the B group, you would be the exact opposite. So Thursday and Friday, you would be doing what's highlighted in blue, and Monday and Tuesday, you would be what's highlighted in yellow. So,
And that makes more sense, Caroline. Thank you for explaining that.
yeah, so it would just be the exact opposite for the blue. So this is just A group Monday through Friday schedule.
Yeah.
And Caroline, what is Wednesday again? Can you just?
Yeah, Wednesday will be the same for everyone because everyone will be home on Wednesday.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
so basically we can clean the school.
Well, we're going to clean the school every night. We're going to deep clean the school every night, but it will give us opportunities to do that. It'll give teachers opportunities in the middle to have any check-ins for students who may need specific AIS support, resource rooms. There might be students who have related services supports that they need, other things that may need to fit into different places in the schedule will be able to happen then as well.
Okay.
Professional development also.
And are you I know this is kind of a, you know, like a fine grain of a question, but are you going to be coordinating families? You know, this person has 3 kids in the district. I'm going to send them all on a schedule so that, you know, the parents aren't trying to send one kid on Monday, Tuesday, and one kid on Thursday, Friday.
Yeah, so we did a split by alpha, but we also considered anybody who lives in the household but doesn't necessarily have the same last name. So family relations kind of thing.
Good.
Yep.
Let me ask a question about Wednesday. So did anybody look at using Wednesday as a in-school day?
Well, we can't accommodate all of the students in school.
No, I know that. So like a 3-2 arrangement and flipping it the following week?
Say that again?
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday for an A group, and the following week they'd have a 2-day week.
Oh, so like a 3-day, 2-day, 3-day, 2-day?
Yes.
Well, we talked about like the A day, B day schedule, continuous. And we had explored that within our subcommittees, and there were various reasons for each of the hybrid models that we had explored. pros and cons for each of them. And this was the hybrid model that the subcommittees, across all of the subcommittees, that was selected.
Well, I think, Caroline, too, if we were to come in and start this schedule and something were to occur, it's good to have a Wednesday day like this built in, where if you had to have an emergency staff meeting or go, and make some kind of adjustments, there is flexibility within there to do that, and for continued training. I think we need to continually support our teachers for, technology and instruction, So you said there will be some times maybe to utilize that day possibly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because that's like a nice safety valve to have in place, because suppose we come in and we start this and then, the numbers change and we want to do something else. It gives you a little bit of time during that day to regroup a little bit, instead of having the exact pressure of having the kids all in the building or that group in the building.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
John, did
I
you
also-
have a question?
Go ahead, John.
No, that kind of answers it. The reason I ask is because we all know it's best to have them in as with real contact, normal contact as much as possible. So that's all.
Well, there was also feedback from the subcommittees, John, that that Wednesday would be a great opportunity to connect with those kids who are medically, unable to attend at all. They'll have a chance to connect with their peers in both cohorts and their teachers on an extended level.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
And there's still nothing here that stops, if a kid, I don't know, violates one of the quarantine rules, they go to Maryland or they go to, Rhode Island or wherever the hell else the rest of them that are on the list. And then they come back. Now they got to stay home for 14 days, or they're exposed. One of the kids in the class is exposed. So now they've all got to bail out. We could still just run this as virtual.
Yeah, Perry, that's a good point. If they had a quarantine, they could just continue with this model and be at home.
Yep. Same, I assume sort of the teachers as well. If a teacher doesn't not comes down with it seriously, but needs to be quarantined, they would just teach from home.
And potentially, that could happen.
Can I throw another?
Yes.
I hesitate saying this, but what if this were the scenario, and you split the kids up A and B, and a parent said, oh, you know what, I actually work Monday, Tuesday. Can my kid be in the kids that go to school Monday, Tuesday thing? Because I'm off Thursday, Friday kind of thing. Did I just open a huge can of worms for you?
I don't know if that's my question to answer.
But I'm kind of just throwing it out there. I just kind of thought of it, talking to other schools and people, and some people are like, oh, well, I don't work on Friday, so it's totally fine, kind of thing. And I'm just wondering, I don't even know if it's something that has to be answered now, but I'm just kind of thinking if that's something that comes up and for some reason parents need their kids to oh, I can't have my kid go. They can go half the week, but they just can't go on this day or that day. Are we going to be able to accommodate that?
Yeah, and those are the challenges, right? So, of course, we are in the business of children, and we always want to do what's best for them, right? For children and families, but we just can't accommodate every single request. I mean, we have requests like that all the time. And we want to be sensitive, and we want to be accommodating, and we want to be helpful. But truly, if we took every single request, unfortunately, sometimes there just has to be that that hard line of this is when we're offering the models and this is when the alphabet's going. I mean, it's hard. Those are the hard lines that sometimes we have to draw.
Okay.
Well, right now we have Debbie is working feverishly on transportation routes either way. And depending on how many different requests we got for, unique situations, it could just wreak havoc on the runs.
I have a question. If the bandwidth is okay, why couldn't we mirror Monday and Tuesday with Thursday and Friday and just have continuous education, whether you're remote or you're in school? And keep the specials at the bottom as normal, so you're not cramping the math, social studies, and science at the bottom of the remote. Why couldn't it be across the board the same, just remote at school?
Can you explain more clearly what you mean? I'm sorry, I don't think I understand what you mean.
Well, like on Monday and Tuesday for the A group, math, they have math basically in the morning, the second period, whatever that might be. And then if they're remote on Thursday and Friday, they don't have math, they have read alouds. Why couldn't you just continue the same subjects across whether they're home or at school? If we have the broadband and we can do a live session, a live class, this way you'd have a continuous learning experience for the student if they're home or in school.
Because in some cases, our students would never see their special area teachers live then, because they're shared with the middle school, specifically with Alden and Elm. They're also shared with the middle school. So if we just did it that way, they would never see their special area teachers live. And then if you see them, the middle school schedule, that would be the same thing. And in some cases, we would have like a very like inequitable scenario of some teachers being fully synchronous and their programs being fully synchronous, and other teachers just having asynchronous push out lessons where they never have contact time with kids. And for many kids, that's what connects them to school. That's what they, feel very passionate about. And that's what education means to them. That may be where their careers are coming from. And, all of these areas are important. For having a well-rounded educational experience. So things like music and art, there's a lot of other benefits to them other than the creative experience. PT and OT, fine motor, gross motor skills come out of that. Some of the math skills come out of that. And, they're really valuable experiences that need to remain intact within the day as best we can.
Do we have a time as far as a start time and an end time to school? Tom had mentioned before that the students leave, and then when they get home, they get back on the computer. So what time would that student dismissal kind of be looking at this point?
It is going to be a truncated day. We're working with, and meaning a truncated day before they dismiss. And then it would be so that their total school day would be very typical. And the reason for that is there's a couple of reasons. One being we aren't certain what time they're going to physically be able to get into the building once we have their temperature screening and all of that. That's just a reality. We don't know how long that's going to be able to take, but that is a necessity based on the plans that we have to be able to provide. With that, we are trying to replicate as best as possible what instruction can look like if we are able to get them into the building, which we do believe is the best case scenario, that they have some time face-to-face with their teachers. So it will be a truncated day that they're here in the building, and then we would be sending them home to be able to have other experiences at home as well.
It was my understanding with the groups that the bus routes are going to be a lot longer. So they might be leaving school earlier, but they're going to be getting home at the same time. I heard that a couple different times. So if that's the case, how would they have time then to get back on the computer? And then that was my only question, pretty much.
One of the things that we're hoping is while the bus routes might be compromised, there are going to be half the number of kids that are going to be on that route. So it would be true that the bus route will likely be the same amount of time, except we'll save on the number of stops that we have to make along the way. So we are hoping that we'll have enough time, and there's going to be some testing that's going to have to happen.
I'm asking that question for the parents that might want to know, are they kids going to be getting home earlier under this? That's pretty much.
Does anyone have any other questions about the elementary schedule before we move on to a sample middle school schedule?
Caroline, it just might go right over my head, but if the kids are in school on Monday and Tuesday, let's say it's Ivan. Ivan's going to school Monday and Tuesday. My other son is home Monday and Tuesday, or another child's home Monday and Tuesday. What are those kids that are home doing on Monday and Tuesday?
What's in yellow?
So that's their okay. Okay. So if they're at home on Monday and Tuesday, they're doing the Thursday and Friday in schedule. And then when they come in, then the kids on Thursday and Friday come in, they're doing what you see on Monday and Tuesday.
That's correct.
Okay.
But specifically to you, Claudia, they're going to try to coordinate to make sure your kids are home on Monday and Tuesday, if I understood it correctly.
Yeah. Right, at the same time. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay. I think we can move on.
All right. Am I up?
You're up, Steve.
All right. So, hello, everybody. Before I go through this schedule, I just want to have you orient yourself to looking at it. So, this is a sample schedule for a grade 6 student. We could have given you one for grade 7 or grade 8, and it would look very similar. So, when you look at it, again, we are going to have two groups that you'll see. There's a group that's in blue there on Monday and Tuesday, and then the light gray that's on Thursday and Friday. Basically, when you see the dark section in the center, that's kind of just color coding and indicating that that would be a time when all students are home receiving their instruction from their teachers. So the first thing you'll notice is that prior to students arriving, teachers will start their day with collaboration time. That's where it says team. One thing we noticed over distance learning that worked really well is that our grade level teams, 6, 7, and 8, as well as our encore teams that were developed, really worked to collaborate and put a lot of things together to provide the best instruction possible. This has been something that we've been utilizing at the middle school for quite some time. So we wanted to make sure that that was in place for teachers each and every day to start their day before students arrive. So when students do arrive, they would begin their day with home base. Our home base time is usually a 10 to 15 minute time where we get kids in the room. We talk about character education. And I think with the ongoing, things going on in the world for our students, this is a great time for them just to connect with their teachers about their anxieties, any social emotional issues they have going on, connect and really plan for their day, whether it be in person or even at home. One of the things we were looking is to utilize this time to give students that time to also connect interpersonally. So whether it be an A group and B group home-based student that may be seeing each other digitally, this is a great way for them to start their day and kind of prep themselves for what would be coming next. So you'll notice the A group would then begin their day with ELA followed by reading. We're continuing that block as we do with our normal schedule, as is that being our best practice to really strengthen those skills, moving through social studies, science, and math. Students would then have a lunch period that would then be followed by the win period. Again, that win period is what I need. That is a period where we would utilize things like resource room, AIS, even some of our band and chorus things that students may be able to link in with, basically giving students just an opportunity. And what's nice about this period is it would be a nice period where students would have a lot of different teachers available to them to assist them. So one thing we identified when you're looking at this to help you understand is that one of the big positives, again, going through that positive advantages that we have in Millbrook in being a smaller district is that when you split our cohorts in half, you're typically looking at a number anywhere from 30 to 35, 40 students. And that's without students that are staying home for legitimate reasons, that C group that Tom was referring to. So in taking advantage of that opportunity, we identified large spaces in the within the middle school building where we would be able to house an entire cohort of students. So what I mean by that is the 6th grade, for example, could be entirely in the auditorium receiving their instruction all day long. The 7th grade could be in a larger space, like maybe the library or a double-sized classroom. We could utilize the gym area as a place. That way we can keep students all in one place while also receiving their direct instruction and then having teachers move in and out of the room for their direct instruction. So this was an advantage that came out of a lot of the different subcommittee work, and one that we wanted to take advantage of. That way our teachers would be able to be interacting with all our students, but then of course taking safety as paramount and ensuring that the students are minimizing how many times they're moving about the building and interacting. So when you see student dismissal, travel home, and that would be our time when our teachers would get their lunch, again, we're working on what exactly that time would be, but this is a truncated schedule. So this wouldn't be the typical 2:44 exit that we typically are used to. This would be far earlier than that. So we would take advantage of that time to get our teachers their lunch. And during that time, we would then wait until students had enough time to get home so that then they could connect with their specials teachers. So that's the art, the music, the facts, PE, technology, all of these courses where, we've identified concerns with many of the social distancing regulations that make it very, very difficult at this time for teachers to really work in a direct model.
Hey, Steve.
Yes, go ahead, Bill.
Just, I didn't want to forget it. So I know you can't give me an exact time, but can you give me a range for student dismissal? Are we talking noon to 1?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, Mr. Hertzog, I think that's fair to say. Again, we're tweaking everything, and until we know exactly what the plan is moving forward, we couldn't really commit to exact numbers. Plus, the other big thing for us is in identifying how long student dismissal takes, combined with all of the COVID checks and standards and procedures that have to be followed. We have to take all of that into consideration in planning that. So I think, yes, that's a fair ballpark number. And
No, I was going back to Chris's earlier question. I mean, parents that have their kids in school Monday and Tuesday, it's not going to be the 3:30, 3 o'clock, whatever.
Right.
They arrive home, so you can just, work your schedule around that. You're going to probably have to be at home between 12:30 and 1:30.
Right. And I mean, part of the reason that decision, when we looked at this and came up with that, was number one, for the fact that the students that we're talking about, grades 6 through 12, are at an age of maturity level where they can make it to their homes and get in the door and manage that. But then also on the back end, so that when their younger siblings are coming home, they are there also to assist families that need that older sibling home to retrieve the younger folks when they're coming home.
So sorry,
Steve,
Steve, can I ask a question? And this goes back now to the elementary level. So for the busing, the kids in the elementary school are going to be, they're not going to be on this bus, but what is their schedule? Are they also going to end? This may have to go back to Tom and Mike, but are they also going to be getting out at school at 12, 1 o'clock and getting home because that's when they do their after school specials? Like, how is that going to work?
So basically, we've coordinated such, so yes, they would have a truncated schedule, but when they're coming home, and again, once we have this all finalized, we'd obviously be releasing all these times, so that everybody can clearly plan, and we're going to try to get that out as soon as possible so families can coordinate those schedules. But yes, they would be coming home at an earlier time, but again, that would be after that older group comes through. So for those families that need assistance with that, they have that available.
Steve, can I just interrupt for 1 second? So you're
Yes,
saying
sir.
that we're going to have our middle school kids caring for the younger siblings, and parents could be at work and not be in the house while all this is going on, correct?
Well, I'm saying that I think that's a reality for many of our families that we certainly are taking into account.
Okay. Now, what about like when kids used to be dropped off at childcare and they're going to go home first and then have to go to childcare from their home. What, I mean, I know that's not your question to answer. So if I'm an elementary kid and I get out and I have to leave at 1 o'clock or whatever the truncated day ends, and I go home for phys ed or whatever I go home for, or the specials, I guess they're just home for the day then. And then, so I'm just wondering, like, is there going to be a lot of concern from parents that this day's ending very early now and my work day's not ending? I used to be home by 3:30 or 4 o'clock. Or I think Perry, you were working towards that, asking that question too, and a little bit from what some other people were asking. I'm just saying, I know we can't answer it all tonight, but.
Yeah, so part of what we have really tried to do in this model is to answer the call from the community to have our at-home instruction be synchronous wherever possible. But if the need for that to be as flexible as possible becomes more important on, behalf of the family, then need for synchronous instruction, then we're going to have to look at that. I mean, could those classes after the student dismissal be asynchronous if necessary? Possibly, but we were trying to go based on the information that we got in our surveys, which was that if we're going to have remote instruction in any case, in any subject, it needed to be synchronous, that teachers needed to have contact time with students. And we heard the families, we heard the concerns, we were trying to respond to that, and we worked with the MTA and they were very gracious in that. So, that's where these recommendations came from. That's where these schedules came from. And
I think
we need to pivot in some of that. We may have to do that.
I think Paul's question is more, we're trying to figure out, and you guys will get to the sort of summary of risk reward, but we're trying to figure out, if parents are hoping that they can at least get 2 days where their kids are in school so they can, work from work or work from wherever, are they really getting that? Is it really worth the risk, of spreading a virus for kids to sit in a classroom with a teacher with a face shield and a mask and gloves, is teaching them till 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I think we're sort of getting ahead of ourselves. I think we need to listen through the rest of the schedules, and this is how we're thinking a hybrid would work. And then we can get back to is it worth it?
So I think the other thing when you look at this too is all of the information that was obtained, whether it be from the parent surveys, whether it was from all the subcommittee work, and our subcommittees, each and every one of them made very large, and again, many of you were on there, so made very detailed notes on plans for all of these models. But where all that information came from is what led to all of these kind of decisions and how to create this model. And the beauty of these models, I think, and this is what Caroline was just talking about, is the ability to adapt and be flexible and dexterous throughout all of them. So while we heard from our community, we need, if we're going to be on distance synchronous instruction, we also are aware of the many social and emotional components that may go into a student going into their day. So one of the things I know, again, and I was in the social emotional committee, so I can speak to it, is one of the discussions was about that school is going to look very different for students. So in the past, a student came to school, they went, and I can only speak to the middle school, but this adapts everywhere else. They went to a class, the class ended, they got up, they walked to their next class, they had recess, they had all these different breaks in their day that helped them to socially and emotionally navigate their day positively. I think school is going to look very different in this hybrid model. Students are going to be in one area for extended period of time. And one of the major concerns that came out of subcommittees, particularly in the social emotional realm, was can we realistically ask our students to put in a full school day, 8 a.m. to 2:44, for example, and really expect them to be able to socially and emotionally positively navigate their day and access the curriculum that we're providing for them. So I think that's where some of this truncated schedule decision making came from, just to give you a little background on that. Just to keep going with the schedule though, on Wednesday, as you see, we have a time there where all students, that would be our A students, our B students, as well as our C students, are connecting via distance learning. And then on Thursday and Friday, you can see that there's the schedule for the B group, which is just kind of a shuffled version of the Monday, Tuesday schedule. And that's, again, just to add a little bit more flexibility for our teachers in planning and being able to reach their students that are both at home and in the building. Any questions on anything here?
Steve, I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
You probably, I don't believe, well, maybe you can answer it, but you keep mentioning the parent community, and anywhere in the survey, does it break down the parent community by our K-5 parent community or 6 through 8 parent community and our, yeah, it is?
I actually can answer that question. In some of the parent forms, it actually did ask where your student was currently stationed. I can definitely tell you that at the middle school level, I went through that entire document and read through every single parent who had a child that was either entering the middle school or actually already at the middle school. So all of the feedback there, I know personally that I did that. I can't attest fully to say I saw them read it, but I'm sure that Rick and Tom did the exact same thing, as well as Mike, with all of the feedback.
Where I'm headed with it is if it's 74% want this bifurcated type schedule, is it a 74% of the, K-5? Is that the highest percentage? I'm talking about the breakdown of, with say the high school, you got like 20% of the parents, you have that big breakdown with percentage, but it's not broken down by school, by age, like by K-5 or 6 to 8. Was that ever done by anybody who prepared this?
No.
That can be easily done. We had the information's on the spreadsheet, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, Howard, that information could be disaggregated by group, certainly. Yeah.
I just want to make sure the parents, are represented in fairly here, because if you had one section of the parents that really want this, and then you had another, say the high school that didn't, then it skews the whole basis of everything.
Sure. Yeah.
I have a question again, and again, maybe I'm just not, some of the stuff I'm just not grasping. So the reasoning for leaving school early, if it's 1 o'clock, is, there's the question. Like, what is the reason that they're only going to go? Are they starting at 8 in the morning as normal? So is it 8 or 9 depending upon the school?
Yep.
And then they're going to end at 1. So if they end at 1, can you just explain again why the reasoning is at 1 o'clock they're going to finish? And again, I know this is not, it's not an excuse, but for those parents that are working and they have kids either in daycare or the family members taking care of them, they're usually, like Barry said, they're usually finishing at, if they're getting off the bus at 3:30 or 4 o'clock, whatever it may be. Now they've got to shift everything back to 1 o'clock and then get somebody to sit with them at home to get them either on the computer or get them getting ready to go or whatever it may be for their specials and whatever that, whatever it may be.
Yeah, and again, so I think to explain the reasoning behind that is one of them was that social emotional component and the fact that school is going to be different and the level of engagement that students were going to have in this kind of new hybrid model. Again, like I said before, if you think about a student who's going through a day that has lots of breaks, whether it be changing classes, whether it be a lunch, a PE where they get to run around or recess, those are just things we can't do at this time. So one, that ability to stay engaged in their education, because we know that engagement is the #1 component of students being able to achieve and learn. I think the other reason too is that when you look at the courses that they are going home to do, again, these are ones in which our teachers Unfortunately, because of COVID, when you think of something like PE, or you think of a band or art or chorus or music, where you have shared supplies or you have students singing, when you have these things, with the new COVID regulations, safety becomes very, very, very difficult to maintain. And so the best way to achieve that education, although we don't love it, is through a distance model. And then lastly, again, I would just say that, you know, we did have to look at it and try to set it up while it is earlier than normal. These are our oldest students in the district that are secondary level. So ones that we feel would be able to manage the ability to get off their bus, get themselves into their homes, and get themselves started with, again, some ample lag time in between to give them a moment in between the changeover from direct instruction, bus ride home, and then eventually their distance learning.
Yeah. And Steve, I hate to keep asking you, you just happen to be one on the screen. Anybody can answer this.
Yeah, it's fine.
Was space a concern? Because if you're putting desks in the gym and we're using the special area for instruction, then space becomes the reason to push the specials to the PM at home. I mean, I can see that. So are you saying the large group areas are going to have desks in them now?
Well, it's
Yes.
not just that though. If you're talking about something where, say things like music or band, when you're talking about anything where children will be increasing respiration, the social distancing models or requirements increase from 6 feet of space between students to 12 feet of space between students.
Yes, yes.
So that's a requirement that we have to follow. So we might have the space, but it's also recommended that that happen outside, right? Whenever possible or actually the recommendation is that it happen outside until the weather is no longer permitting. So yes, those spaces traditionally used for PE and for music, et cetera, may at this point be used for something else, not even sure that that's true, be used for something else. But the reality is right now, the recommendation is that those classes happen outside, weather permitting. The issue with that is that if we plan to have those classes outside, and those classes typically are classes in and of themselves of, you know, large groups, because that's ideal for the band and the chorus, that they have large groups. If they can't have class outside because weather is not permitting, then where are we going to put those large groups that have to be socially distanced 6 feet apart in the meantime? So
Well, the other thing to remember is not all kids go home. You know, you got kids that go to daycare, and you know, you're basically saying that now they're going to have to take these daycare centers or, you know, people that watch the kids and catch them as they, you know, quickly get off the bus and then get them 12 feet apart if they're going to do PE. I don't know. It just sounds very complicated, but
yeah,
and I think it's necessary. But
yeah, and that's where our flexibility even lies within this, in how we deliver that, whether it's within certain time frames or otherwise. And again, just to follow up one last on what Paul said, you know, I do want to say that when the decision was made and we talked about utilizing the positive that is our small cohort sizes, especially when you divide them in half, that decision was not what made the decision to move PE specials and those things out of those areas. Those areas were identified very early on as going to be very, very difficult to do in our current setup during COVID and with all the procedures and practices that are currently in place. So that wasn't what made the PE move to distance learning. It was just the PE art and the laws and things that go with that made that decision go.
I got it. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, no problem.
Sorry, Steve, sorry to interrupt again. I'm gonna throw something out there, and I'm again, just like Jen said, a Pandora's box. Have you guys thought about keeping, because 6th grade, they're right on that cusp of being allowed to stay home, by themselves. Some of the parents may not want that. Have you guys thought about grouping the fifth grade, the sixth grade in with the K through 5? So it's K through 6, the school. So, just for those younger age kids that may not be able to stay home or the maturity enough there to get on the computer, get on with the whoever it may be for either the specials or PE. Has that been a thought? And if these students are coming home early, like I just think that the earlier, I know that it's not set in stone, the 1 o'clock. It just seems awfully early that maybe for some of the students, that check and connect could happen more at school instead of at home, because now you're asking these children to get on the computer, to get themselves ready and without the distractions. Sixth grade, I remember my sixth graders, some of them are not that mature enough to do that yet. And I understand the specials in the PE, I 100% get that, but I don't know. It's just a thought, but going through K through 6 and grouping them in with the the K through 6 is one group, and then the 7 and 8 and the high school is, I don't know what you're gonna do with the high school, but that's just a thought.
Yeah, no, I think that's very well noted.
So what I'm hearing is that there's concerns about the that particular piece of it, and given the model, we can work with that particular piece of it and make something that works given that constraint. We understand that because of the COVID and the constraints of COVID, we cannot have groups of students mixing. Specials is where groups of students are going to mix. That can't happen. So whatever the decision is made, we will have to figure out something that works within that. I mean, that's just the reality. So
we can also
we hear that.
I mean, they're going to be in school 3 of the 5 days. I'm sorry, remote 3 of the 5 days. So, I mean, you could always slide the specials and the PA more towards the remote area and extend out those 2 days a little bit. They might get a little bit less of specials and PE. But then you got to ask a question, does any student want to sit in an auditorium chair for 7 hours? Great. And I understand Steve when he said that, that's the other side of it.
It's so tough.
All right, Steve, a question, you keep mentioning social and emotional with the as you're presenting the plan. Is there, and you don't have to answer this, but anybody in administration can answer, is there a reason that we do not have a school psychologist present at this board meeting to address this?
I can't say why we necessarily don't have a psychologist at this meeting, but Mr. Shapiro, I can tell you that we did have our psychologist on all of our subcommittees for all of this work.
I'm aware of that.
Yeah, particularly when it came to the social emotional, we had them putting in all that stuff. So, we are the ones here to kind of put out that information from them, and they were certainly a large voice throughout all of this work.
I'm sure they were, but for the parents who were not part of the committees or maybe watching this, it would be nice so we would have the school psychologist, somebody who has this training to go into this social and emotional, not to discredit your dealings with them with social and emotional, but they are the professionals.
Without a doubt.
Hey, Steve, next time you should present first. You don't got to answer all these questions, man.
It's all right. I don't mind. I like talking. You know that.
I know. I hear you.
Why don't we, unless there's any specific questions about middle school schedule, why don't we move to the high school?
Okay, good evening, everyone. So here's a sample of a 9th grade student hybrid schedule. At the high school, we would be utilizing large group spaces, similar to the middle school, primarily for our freshmen and sophomores, as the majority of these students have the same core classes, whereas it varies more for our juniors and seniors, and they will likely be spread out across classrooms. Looking at this schedule, in the second column, this would be a schedule for an A group student for Monday and Tuesday. So students would start out in homeroom, followed by their ELA class, again in a large group space such as the gymnasium. Then after ELA, the math teacher would come into the gym and teach math, and so on. After math, Mrs. DeRosa would come into the gym to teach global, and so on until dismissal. Once they get home, they would then log in for their electives. The B group of students would follow this schedule on Thursday and Friday. On Monday and Tuesdays, the B group would follow the schedule in the right column, where all of their classes on these days would take place remotely with synchronous learning, as this was a concern with our high school parents who filled out the survey. And our A group would follow this schedule on Thursday and Fridays. So at the high school, our schedule is definitely a work in progress. Again, it's very unique, very different from an elementary schedule, even a middle school schedule. Nothing set in stone, but we feel that based on this model, this would be most beneficial for our students under these circumstances. Lastly, at the bottom of each column, all of the electives have varying grade levels that mix together. Therefore, these classes would also be delivered remotely.
So Rick, so we just, we just had this long debate and discussion and finally resolution of the whole IB versus Dutchess Community College versus Marist versus Syracuse. How do we tie in our students that are taking those classes? I mean, because they're going to have to, we can't just tell them when their, I don't know, geometry is. We have to basically work it around someone else, right?
Right, so that's why I said that the freshmen and sophomores, they're not necessarily affected with IB or AP level classes, so they're in the large group settings, whereas those juniors who do take those level of courses are going to be separated in the classrooms. Does that make sense? Or answer your question?
Well, not really. So if you take the juniors and seniors, if one of them has a Dutchess Community College class, I don't even know what that would be, but a Dutchess course, where are they just going to stay home and do those courses? Because I don't know, as Dutchess is back on campus or Marist, I honestly haven't followed them that much.
Yeah, no, so for example, Mrs. Trout teaches at English 12 Dutchess Community College, so she would be teaching that class with those students in person. And then you see on the flip side, when they're home remotely, she would be logging in with those students and doing synchronous learning with those students.
Okay.
Yeah, it would follow a very similar pattern to what's on the screen. And it would be the same where each of these is listed in a period for the students here and listed for a period in the student's home. Except that would be for like juniors and seniors only. And it would follow the same pattern, sort of blocked more for like ELA, math, global. And unfortunately, because again, those tend to be more purely blocked than things like the electives that mix between different grade levels and cohorts of students, that you can't keep them as pure as the core classes can be kept. So if we can put those kids by grade level in different classrooms, it's a little bit easier to keep them from mixing throughout the day. Even if we have students with headphones and maybe they're listening into a different classroom, we've had conversations with Elliot about how we can accomplish that by uploading, downloading from different classrooms. And a lot of times, some of the same students follow the same pattern. Like, for example, you'll see here that algebra and geometry are within the same period, because a student taking algebra won't be taking geometry, even though they're both in 9th grade. Similar, a living environment and a nurse science student won't likely be taking the same, they won't be taking both. So just because they're both in 9th grade, they're both listed there, but they won't be taking both classes. So they might happen in the same period. There's two different teachers, and they'll be representative of two small different student groups.
They would be in the bigger rooms, like the gym or one of those.
Yeah, so we can actually seat them so they're separate. They're likely going to be a small chunk of kids, probably the same small chunk of kids. So we could have them clustered together.
And Elliot, we have the technology to separate, whether it's put up some petitions or something to make sure that Class A doesn't interfere with Class B?
In a common space, yeah, we could use, like Caroline said, we can use headsets to, each kid could be listening to a different instructor. We also, by using the big group model where we can, we're cutting down the amount of sessions that we're having simultaneously, which would give us a little bit more flexibility so that when we do have to, let's say, at the high school, if I want to have a teacher casting from a main classroom into two other classrooms where they have additional students, and we ran out of big spaces, right? So we can do that even if we used Google and we're going out to the cloud and back, because with these models in place, I can't imagine we're going to go anywhere near that 50 session number simultaneously.
But doesn't that defeat? I mean, if we're going to put the kids in a different classroom, put earbuds in their ears, have them watching the computer screen, the teachers in a face shield and a mask in another room, doesn't that sort of defeat we want teachers to be face to face with their kids?
I mean, speaking from a technology standpoint, they would be able to move freely between the rooms, so at least they'd get some FaceTime with their kids, but certainly not ideal for what we want it to be.
Okay. So Rick, how much more do you think you have to, because I know that with this scheduling, you've really got to just sort of work student by student through it. Is this another week or another 2 weeks of fine tuning to get the schedule locked in? Or it's really a student by student schedule, right?
I mean, it is a student by student schedule, but yeah. I think once we have the decision by the board in terms of whether we're going remote and or hybrid, then we'll move forward and continue to plug away.
And sort of a side question for each of the principals, and I guess it's probably Brian as well, is how many new employees do we need to do this? I mean, we got to have. Whoa, I'm not sure what that was. I mean, we've got to have people in the hallway saying, no, back off 6 feet, put the mask on. We got to have those people on buses. We got to have them in the cafeterias. We're going to have somebody doing this commandment we just got about tracing or traceability. Have you guys looked into how many new people we're going to need to do this? I mean, teachers are going to be trying to eat their lunch while the kids are on the bus. So, we're certainly not going to have our teachers on buses. I'm assuming we're just going to have to hire monitors. Have we thought about how many that is to cover all 4 buildings?
I think the reality is we're going to need to know if we are able to use any large group instructional spaces. If that's the case, that's going to help us in terms of teachers being able to see their students. Like when you say, how does it help us to have our students here if they're not actually seeing their teachers? If we can use large group instructional spaces, if we do have the smart board abilities to be able to do that, that's going to help us from needing additional staff and having our teachers be able to teach their students when they are here in the building within the same room.
Yeah, my thing was more, Caroline, more towards, you're going to have, I would assume, because it's still, I believe, our responsibility to make sure that our students stay socially distanced, that our students are wearing their masks, that they're behaving, all that good stuff. Somebody, I assume, is going to be, either we're shutting the drinking fountains down or cleaning them after every person. I was just curious, all these people that are going to monitor and no, get away from so-and-so because you're only 4 feet and put that mask back over your nose. I'm assuming we're going to need 1 per bus. We're going to need at least every time classes change in the hallways, we're going to need those people. I don't know whether you know, whether somebody's got to monitor the bathrooms to say, oh, yeah, we just had 2 kids go in, we got to clean it. Have we looked at how many people we're going to need to do all this?
It really is going to depend on the model that's ultimately chosen. And we're going to have some staff, so it may not even be hiring extra people. It may be changing their hours and coming back to the board and saying, we need this number of aides for this many extra hours. You know, if they were going to ride a bus, as an example, if we were going to need that time. But most of this is going to be determined because we'll have the opportunity potentially to reallocate staff, and depending on model, do we enter into an SMOA with the CSEA about staffing and job titles and things like that. So first step is really going to ultimately be determined about where we about model of where we are.
Yeah, no, I mean, the key for us to make that decision is to understand, you know, as much of the facts of, like, you know, and I know you're not going to be able to say it's 17 and a half person hours, but, you know, is it, we need 4 extra people at the, unless we're just assuming that we can get the CSEA to do it, which I think is not a very appropriate sort of position to take. But, you know, if we're saying the high school's got 4 sections of hallway, we're going to have to put a person in each thing. So that's 4. We need, you know, 1, 2 per level. In the middle school, that's 6. So that's 10, you know, a round number that says to us, you know, we got this, or because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to balance the, you know, the safety of the kids, the safety of our staff, the safety of our parents, and the cost of because, you know, the other side of all of this is what is the cost of the district balanced with the academic capabilities of all these options.
So I have a question. I don't know if this is for Laura, Caroline, or the principals. But if, let's say there's the teacher, you've got it blocked out for ELA, I don't know, I'm just gonna throw a time out there, and at 10 o'clock in the morning, the teachers are teaching ELA. So what's the global teacher doing at that point? Is it just like only the ELA teachers are teaching at 10 o'clock, and then the next, you know, then it's the algebra teachers that teaching at 11, and then the global teachers are teaching at 12. So what are they doing, the other teachers, at that point?
Yeah, so they might be providing supervision. Some of them may potentially teach other levels. It depends on the subject area and the teacher. Some of them may teach different, just because they teach Global 1 doesn't mean that they don't teach another class.
So it would be at a different time. Like, it's not, you're not just doing all, like the students are all not taking Global 1, like.
Right, so Global 1, for example, that teacher may very well teach all of her students at once, and then she may teach her synchronous global class. So that may be her schedule for the day, but she may have other responsibilities in terms of assisting with the supervision of the students in the large group instructional area.
Well, I think that just answered Perry's question, that you have to have the efficiency to have that done and then assign those people to maybe do some other duties before we hire people. We have to see that. So I think, and Brian was saying, we're not crossing that bridge until we get to it. So it seems like we have to give the answer first, whether we're going to move forward or not, and then those decisions can be made. That's what I'm hearing.
And contractually, teachers do have duties too. So, you know, they could be assigned when they're not teaching to do some of that supervision in the hallway, and could be.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I really don't like the answer that pretty much we think we can cover it. You know, it's, to me, if we're gonna try to do this, We got to make sure we've got people, taking people out of our office, environment and putting them on a bus and having them, spend the time yelling at kids to get away from each other, put your mask back on. That's not the same duties. And I would not expect the CSEA or the teachers union or any of those to say, when in between your global studies and your science class, the kids are going to be heading home, so you can jump on a bus and ride home with the elementary school kids. That's just
I was talking more about building level responsibilities.
Oh yeah. No, I got you, Paul.
No, transportation's a whole different.
And Perry, point well taken. Yeah, that would just be things. So not necessarily people who are in the office, but people who monitor kids. We're talking about monitors who are already here. We're talking about the possibility of reallocating people to jobs that would also be within their function. Everything at this point is still on the table. So when we talk about teachers have within their contract that they do duties. One of the duties is supervision in the hallways, hall duty. It's existed for as long as people have been hanging out in the halls. So these are it would just be real allocating people with the job functions that they do, and then seeing what we can do about being creative.
So pretty much, we're pretty confident that we don't need any new people, that we can cover it with what we have.
Well, we talked about it just a little before. It could be that you're approving additional staffing in terms of hours. And we also have to get to the point that we figure out exactly what we need. So as an example, we have a part-time monitor at the middle school. At what point do we need to be able to make that person closer to full-time in order to be able to accomplish what we need in the middle school? That may very well come about once staffing assignments and duties are finished with the assignments at the middle school, as one example.
So we may be able to pay people more, just not go get any more human beings.
Yes, that could be definitely one paradigm for sure.
The other piece with transportation, Brian, too, and I know you're doing a lot with transportation. If kids are socially distanced, except for kids maybe in the same home, they shouldn't be really getting up on the bus anyway. They're seated apart, and they're probably going to be staying in their seats, right?
That's exactly right. And so, we laugh because kids are kids and they're going to do what they're going to do. But right now, it wasn't anticipated that we were getting a monitor for every bus, particularly if there's only going to be 11 kids on some runs and up to 20 on another. We would definitely expect that bus drivers would be able to handle it.
So, I was going at. I mean, I know kids aren't perfect. Kids are going to jump up, but whatever. Does first student, if we needed them to, provide a monitor if needed, or that's out of the question?
Well, so they, and I don't want to speak for them, they're both here, but what they've made clear that they do not have the staffing to provide. They would have a heck of a time trying to find folks to be able to staff on every bus, and in that case, if that's something that we wanted to do, we would have to provide monitors for the buses during those times.
And quite honestly, I don't want the driver spending half his time looking in the rearview mirror, making sure the kids aren't switching seats, because they don't stay in their seats. And I mean, you go look at the sports buses, and if kids are all over the place, they're standing up, and then, hey, who's got the cool mask? You got to have somebody, I would expect, because once we take these kids in, it's our responsibility to make sure that they are social distancing, that they're keeping their masks on, they're doing all the stuff they're supposed to do. And therefore, we're not going to tell a bus driver, by the way, once in a while, just check, make sure nobody's, spitting at each other or whatever. To me, I think, we're taking on a responsibility, if we bring them to school, of doing everything that's necessary to make sure, the first sign of a fever, they're out the door. The first sign, if they're, and then, what's the legal, I'll say legal rights, but it's not legal.
But Perry, you know what else we may have to explore down the road, depending upon where we go after tonight, that if a kid gets out of a seat and is getting closer to possibly exposing someone or going too close, what are the consequences for that?
Exactly.
And that's got to be entered by our law firm. In the code of conduct, it should be added in that, you need to stay in your seat on the bus. I mean, we're in crisis mode
even in the hallway, you got two kids walking down and they get too close. What's the person, the teacher, if we're going to make teachers stand in the hallway and do this, what's their level of authority to say, get away from each other? If you don't, what's the consequence of it? I mean, you go anywhere. I mean, probably a lot of the parents aren't following some of these things. They're going places they're not supposed to, so they're going to come to school thinking, hey, I've got the right to say yes or no to this stuff. And the thing that we need to make clear when we do this, or, please someday when we bring everybody back at one, together, is to, what do we legally and morally and school wise, what happens? Kid gets suspended for not social distancing?
Yeah, with your point, Perry, I think it would be wise. We can get a legal opinion on that in terms of monitors on the bus, and be able to report back to the board what their thoughts are.
But it's everywhere. You got to think of it across the board. Is somebody going to be watching the bathrooms to know how many kids have gone in, so that the janitor's got to jump in, because it doesn't do you any good if you're keeping the kids 6 feet apart, but they're going into the bathroom, which doesn't allow you to be 6 feet apart, or doesn't force you to be 6 feet apart. The hallways.
But those are points well taken, and it also leads to the mask conversation. It's a hard conversation to have, but if somebody takes their mask off and is within 6 feet, and it's first time it happens, second time it happens, third time it happens, that's like going in, possibly harming somebody. I mean, that's for down the road. I understand that it's not for tonight. I'm just saying it's part of the same conversation.
But we have to understand, as a board, we have to at least have a bigger than a bread box understanding of whether or not this is financially feasible to do this, given that we own this. I think maybe, Governor Cuomo will tell us, we don't have any responsibility in this. But to me, we own the responsibility of, we're saying, yep, you can bring them back. So we own the responsibility of making sure that they're all safe, that they're all, they're following the guidelines.
Harry, I have two questions.
Yep.
First question is, do we have enough nurses? The second question is, so what if there's a student that is supposed to be quarantined because they did go away, let's say on the weekend or wherever, and they don't quarantine and they show up at school? How are we supposed to know, how does that work? Like, how is that going to be monitored? Because I mean, we all have lives. We still, we're still going places. We're still doing things. How is that going to be monitored? And again, do we have enough nurses in the school district? Do we have to get more nurses to help out in any way? Well, I mean, that could be to anybody. Sorry, I asked you, but it could be to anybody.
No, and I think you're right, Claudia. I mean, I had to go to a facility today, and when you walk in, the first thing you do is you go down through, and this is every time you go. This isn't just like the first time they've ever met you. Every time you go in, you go through have you been to any states that have, have you been exposed? Have you recently had la 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 la? And then they explain to you what happens if you lie, or what happens if you forget. They have the right to kick you out immediately. We're going to need to do that same type of thing with our parents and say, you guys bring your kid in here and tell us that, they haven't been to any place in the last 2 weeks that, whatever's on the list, and they haven't been exposed, and they don't have a fever. I mean, how many times do parents send their kids to school with Advil in them because they got a slight fever.
Yeah.
That, you know.
We have those
Anyway.
screeners at every entrance. And we also have them electronically for our staff so that they can fill them out electronically before arriving at the building as well. So we have someone monitoring that to make sure that nobody's entering the building without having filled that out. And we have them in paper form so that people can fill them out as well if they have not done so before they entered. And those screeners include those questions if you've traveled anywhere on the do not travel list, if you have any of the symptoms associated with COVID, if you've had a fever, if you've been in contact with anyone who's tested positive, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And similar to what you were saying, Perry, there's an explanation of, you know, why we're asking this, you sign your name, et cetera. And in terms of nurses, Claudia, we have a nurse in every one of our buildings. We just posted for a substitute nurse as well. And I believe Laura's going to be speaking to the board about other circumstances around nursing tonight if she hasn't already.
The substitute is the nurse that's on leave. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to
If
make
I
sure.
could just
I'm sorry,
interrupt a moment.
One more question to Caroline. Caroline, the question also is this also going towards the questionnaire that you just asked? Is that for the teachers and staff, or is that for the students?
So the screener for students, as far as I know, and Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding of this student screener is that the student screener is periodic. It's not daily for students.
And the guidance is that it's highly recommended that parents take temperatures at home, but we know life gets in the way. So we're fully preparing to take temperatures here in school. But again, like Caroline said, the guidance is a periodical screener for kids.
Laura, can we get legal consultation on taking the temperatures as far as liability goes and stuff like that? Or you already did that?
We've already done that.
Okay.
It's just making sure that we are not capturing or housing any confidential information or overstepping privacy.
I got it. Yeah, that's why
it can be a yes or a no. And then they would not be permitted into the building. They would be, if it's an adult, they would be asked to go to their health care or reach out to the Department of Health for consultation. With a child, we would have to put him or her in an isolation room, which is also part of the requirements, and call the parent immediately.
Yeah, so we got isolation areas set up already then, okay.
Yeah, we've got screeners.
If I may, I wanted to just speak to the busing and the children on the busing. Our plan is to have them one in each seat unless they're family or come from the same home. But the drivers go through extensive training on how to keep their bus under control, how to keep their children under control. And they're taught to constantly look in the rearview mirror at the children to see what they're doing. We also have video cameras on the buses, and that helps a lot as well. But, you know, you're occasionally, of course, you're going to have their children or children. But for the most part, there's very little issues on the Millbrook buses.
Can you introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm Karen McKinley. I'm the manager for First Student in Millbrook.
Can I ask a clarifying question, just going back to Perry's point on the schedules and the buildings? Now, is it right to say that students will not be changing rooms, teachers will be, and even lunches are going to be brought into that room? They're not going to a lunchroom?
That's correct.
And also just one point on consequences. And we also want to front load teachers with training and clear expectations about what they can and cannot do, or of symptoms that they may want to report to the nurse, but also making sure that we're being very strategic and mindful about teaching our kids how to keep each other safe. Why are we wearing a mask? Giving the rationale, giving the understanding that if you're not wearing your mask, you're not protecting your friend, you're not protecting the community. Making sure that your parents are taking your temperature, or that we're we're following all the rules. And so we need to look to our kids and trust them that they're going to make good decisions as well when they have the training and information needed. We take a lot of time in teaching them how to evacuate the building, do a lockdown, do a lockout, all of these things. And it's just going to be practice and ongoing conversations as to why or why not this behavior is appropriate. And so it's really going to take a lot of conversation, and also it's a trust. We got to trust our parents, we got to trust our staff, we got to trust each other to make good decisions for one another, because this is the world we live in. I put a mask on because I know that I'm not protecting myself, I'm protecting the person who's in the room with me. That's super important to us as human beings, as a community, a caring community. And I think if we can have those conversations during home base and morning meeting, or any opportunity that arises during the day to talk about behavior and care for one another, I think that will work for most, and other kids, they'll need a little more attention, and a little more harder conversation. But I think overall, our kids do right. They're a good bunch of kids that want to be good citizens and contributing citizens to this community. So I think we need to give them some credit as well.
It's a good point, Laura. Thank you. Laura, in addition, are you thinking about signage to support, like keeping hands clean, signs in the bathroom, hallways and stuff like that too?
Yeah, we got tons of signage coming up. We also have the 6, the buttons on the floor of what 6 feet look, or we can only have 2 students in a restroom. So this is where you stand. So it's going to be a lot of training for our kids and what our expectations are, and a lot of training for all of us, so that we can help them make good decisions.
Yeah, thank you. Some good points. Thank you.
Can I ask a couple questions? And I missed, I think Chris just asked this about eating lunch in the classroom, and Tom and I guess Mike, I apologize that now I can't remember the elementary schedule, but will the elementary kids eat lunch in the classroom?
Yes.
Yeah, in the lunchroom,
Okay.
if they're using a large space.
Okay, and with the elementary kids, again, I'm sorry, I can't remember what the schedule, is that also like, say, my daughter usually has 15 kids in a class, but you can only have 10. Will they, are they going back, 15 kids per class or do they have to do, some kids are in another room, or are they using the gym? Are they using the large spaces for elementary?
Well, the meals will be delivered to the place where the students are, whether it's classroom or the gym or library. Wherever the eating area is, they'll be delivered.
And are they, as far as the teaching, say a first grader or second grader, if it's a class of 15 kids, are there going to be the 15 kids in that class with one teacher? Or I thought you were only allowed to have X amount of kids in a classroom because of space.
So it's half of the occupancy of the room, plus
Okay.
adhering to the 6 feet of social distancing. So it depends on the total occupancy of the room based on square footage. And you also have to maintain the 6 feet of social distancing. And it has to do with the space from the center of the child's head, leaned over center of the desk, right? Because if you're picturing how a kid would lean forward, so it's the center of the desk to the back of the child's desk has to be 6 feet. Because if you think about when a child's writing, they might lean over. So that's the way. So that's the most updated guidance, the way that you have to measure 6 feet.
All right, so we're not sure if, I just am thinking, I think my daughter's class has 15 kids. So you're not sure if all the kids can be in one class, or if they have to remote to another, put 10 kids in one and 5 in another and have an aide in that room? Or we're just not sure about that yet?
Yeah, well, we don't know how it would be set up based on the division of the alphabet anyway, if all of them would even be present on the same day.
Oh, okay. Okay. And my last question, are we also entertaining the thought of K through 5 or K through 8 going back full time and then some remote, or are we definitely set on these hybrid schedules?
Well, this is the hybrid schedule that came out of the subcommittee groups. So this is This is the one that is being presented to the board at this time. Is the AABB based on 50% of the student population in K-12.
Okay, so there's no, so are we just not even thinking about sending like K through 5 back, all of them back full-time, and then some hybrid for the older kids?
We had discussed that. Elliot, do you want to go back to the slide that has all of the models that we talked about?
And also, I know we talk about 3 scenarios: in person, remote, and hybrid, but there are multiple hybrids within each of those scenarios. So yes, I think, Jennifer, it could happen.
Okay.
If it made sense at that time. If we said, you know what, maybe we can start bringing full classes back because there's no spike, you know, circumstances have changed, but these could be ever evolving hybrids, most definitely.
Okay, yeah, I think I probably used the wrong word. I was just looking at the split attendance or the split, well, I mean, the split alternating I got, but K through 5, or I thought that was, I thought that's what K through 8 live attendance daily meant.
Yeah, so essentially a hybrid model as we were defining it was any opportunity in which some students were here and some students were home kind of thing. So different opportunities were like an alternating cohort attendance where we had days of attendance where we were alternating groups of students coming in. Split attendance was when we had like the K-5 students and 6-12 students with disabilities that were in person. And then the 7 through 12 students who were general education, or 6 through 12 students general education, were on distance learning. And then the split alternating attendance, so it was kind of a hybrid of the hybrid where K-8 were here, and then the 9 through 12 had the 9 through 12 were kind of split, where 9 and 10 had live attendance and on A week, and then the alternating B week was 11th and 12th graders. So one week there was 9 and 10, the next week 11th and 12th, and then they alternated, but every day K through 8 was here.
Okay, so that, I think that was my question. Are we not, so that would mean like everybody from kindergarten through 8th grade would go every single day, and then the 9, 10, and 11, 12 would alternate. That's what the split alternating. So are we not considering that right now?
Correct. So when we went through the subcommittees, we did a whole lot of work and conversation around each of these models, and there was various reasons why they were rejected for the current time. And some of those, I mean, you know, we could go through all of those at a different time. We weren't prepared to discuss them right now, but there were a bunch of different reasons why each of the subcommittees, whether it was teaching and learning, social, emotional, the athletics and extracurriculars, or the special education subcommittee, felt as though one or each of these had pros and cons for each of the models.
Remember, this is all we're talking about here is what is the model when we start school in September? You know, we could choose to, well, we could go back, we could go hybrid, and New York State spikes and Cuomo tells us to shut everything down October 1st. We might decide that we're going to go virtual for September, and then October we'll give the K-5 a shot, or we'll give you know, the juniors and seniors a shot. Really, what this discussion, this decision that we have to make is how does Millbrook start the 2021 schedule?
Okay. Yeah, I think
Jen was asking.
That was my question. Yeah, are we entertaining all different ideas, or what was presented? Is that what we're gonna go with?
We were told here we're going to get into the pros and cons of each thing. So
yeah,
good question.
If we could lump in, if we could lump in when, you know, when we talk about this, maybe the K through 6 going at the same time, K through 6 doing the model together, you know, more in school. I don't know if that ever comes up. Just because of the maturity, the 6th grade, that's all.
So if we start with the hybrid model, and we have parents that want to have their kids virtually at home, I know Cuomo had mentioned that every parent has a right to get remote instruction to a certain extent. It might be a little fuzzy that he said that, but there are lines as far as if they have, if they're susceptible to the illness and everything else. But where is that line? What if they have anxiety? What if they just don't want to go, they're frightened? I mean, we can't really, that's a very gray area to draw. So are we going to leave it open for parents if we go into hybrid that have the choice to say, no, I want to do virtual? Will we offer that?
So anxiety is a disability. If it is documented by a physician.
Okay, so if they don't have that and they want to do virtual and we go into hybrid, we do not have that option?
I didn't say that.
Okay, I'm just asking.
So one eighth of people, 1 out of 8, said they prefer distance learning, remote. So you're saying they should come in?
Can you say that again, John? I'm sorry.
Are we asking the 12% of people that said we preferred remote? I mean, Chris is asking that question. I'm just asking again. Are we saying there's only one model for the whole district or not? Is that the proposal?
If a parent says, I'm terrified, I don't want to send my kid to school, can we just put them on the, work from home, or they have to have a doctor's note saying that, for whatever reason, we have to accommodate it?
We've
I'm
spoken
going to
about
say
it.
that.
Go ahead, Brian. Go ahead, Brian.
I'm just going to say that we're going to need additional guidance from, I was just in a session today where they basically acknowledge that Cuomo gets to say whatever it is that he wants to say in terms of comfort level and what he thinks, but until it gets put into an executive order to be able to provide school districts with better guidance in order to be able to create schedules, we're really not beholden to anything. And not that we wouldn't want to be in a position to be understanding for the needs of our kids and families for sure. But it certainly does make schedule creation, both for all of it, right? Transportation, food service, where Steve and Rick are going to be hand scheduling all of these kids in the classes. There's going to eventually be a line that's going to have to be drawn. And when we get some clearance from executive orders, we'll be able to do that better.
Is it assumed that there will be an executive order about it, or do we need to consult our legal team to say we have to go with some sort of direction here from what they interpret?
Both.
That's kind of why I'd say our legal team has to be plugged in here for me to be comfortable.
Yeah, we recently attended a law conference, and they did talk about what Governor Cuomo says, anxiety and discomfort, and what Caroline was talking about, that anxiety is a ADA and can be considered a reason for not coming to school, but discomfort doesn't have the documentation that we're requiring right now. So really, it is going to be legal guidance to help us through this, because like Brian said, we do want to be sensitive, but we also have a district to run, and we need to have some guidance, rules, and lines to draw so that there's not chaos, in the building. We know who's coming, we know who we need to feed, we know who we need to transport. But is there flexibility? Those are the areas we'd like to work with families if we can.
Yeah,
and you don't want to force a student into to make them sicker emotionally or mentally by forcing them into school either. We do need to have legal opinion before we can really move forward. We can't wait for the governor to may or may not issue something.
Some local school districts actually gave until like next week for a family to decide, are you going full remote? This is our hybrid plan. So like Laura was saying, that would help the teacher's schedule and know how much food to prepare and all of that.
Yeah.
So that might be an option, is all I'm saying.
Because even when we were doing this survey and we spoke with Debbie and Karen from First student is doing a survey saying, well, are you interested in transportation now, or not? And then after a period of time, we check in with them again, because we know circumstances at home are changing too. Parents may feel comfortable putting their child on the bus at this time, but maybe they want to have a wait and see period and say, oh, okay, this is how it's working. This is what it looks like. I do want to put my child on the bus now, so that we're creating sort of checkpoints for parents to possibly change their minds. Or maybe they're back at work now and they weren't when they were able to drive their child to school.
You got to understand too, once the kids are going to want to, there are going to be a certain percentage of kids that get there. And when they realize there's no lockers, no lunchroom, no recess, no sports, 6 feet apart, all facing forward, all wearing masks, one classroom, no fans in the rooms, they're going to, some kids are going to definitely be, and they're going to want to say, I don't want to go back. So, that's something to think about as well.
Yeah.
Have we on to staff, have we surveyed our staff to find out are their staff affected by requiring in-school attendance, if there are some risks, staff with risks?
So legal is in the process of drafting a letter for that situation. Yes.
All right, good.
Or what about testing for staff? Is that required prior to the school year started? And is it required on a regular basis moving forward? Or how is that working?
What kind of testing?
Just COVID testing for staff. Is that anything that's considered, or is it not? I don't know if it's legally able to do it. I'm just asking the question because I know districts have done that.
So actually, that's part of what we have to create as of Friday's plan Friday's most recent guidance from Cuomo. We have to create a plan for how we will test for students and staff, students who are presenting with symptoms. We have to have a plan for how we will refer students for testing. And also for contact tracing. So that's part of one of the 3 plans that we have to be able to create and post for the public. Elliot, can you go down? And I can get to that in a minute. Elliot. Okay, so I'll be to your question in just 1 minute, but one of the things that we talked about in our discussions between hybrid and remote models, the pros and cons, because obviously the other option we know would be a full in-person model, which just isn't something that is possible right now. So the pros and cons that we weighed in the hybrid model versus the remote model, fully remote. In a hybrid model, we get face-to-face interactions with students, which obviously is very ideal. There's student-to-student peer interaction, and though they are 6 feet apart, they do get to see their friends. They do get to interact with their friends. I think one of the things about seeing a student in person is there's a lot that you can tell about a student in person. Even in terms of things about a student's mental health that you can pick up on. Are they exercising proper hygiene? Because that is a mental health indicator. Are they coming in and what's their body language like? Something that you can't necessarily pick up on very easily on the computer, but it's really an important indicator when you can see that about a student. How are they presenting? What's their affect like? Something you can pick up on much easier in person. That's very important. And I think that's something that face-to-face interaction as frequently as possible is available in a hybrid model, which is not going to be available to us in a remote environment.
When I'm looking at your hybrid, I see student attendance / work responsibility as a pro. I mean, so there's no way to have our teachers say this student was on a remote class. They've they've submitted all their work on time. I mean, I think that was the hard part of the March to June because we just basically slammed the doors shut and shoved them out in the parking lot. But to me, I would think that, you know, every college, all your attendance, your assessments, your assignments, everything is tracked, and probably a hell of a lot better than tracked when they're in class, and you know who was actually there. You've got a record of who's on these sessions. So I mean, I don't know, as you know, if we're talking about the way we were forced to do it, you know, the day we slammed the door shut, yeah. But I would expect to see much more planning and scheduling and structure, even if we are remote.
Yeah, and I don't think that that's not true. I think we would plan to see this very differently this time around too, if we ever have to go into a remote environment. And I agree with you, Perry, but I think that something to be said with the tracking of attendance, the interventions with attendance, the work responsibility, and not only that, but the support for that work responsibility when students are here in school. They'll have access to a teacher, they'll have the support of the teacher very differently in a face-to-face environment. A teacher who's able to help them with that work responsibility is very different when they're here in the building. Also, we talked about the assessments in a hybrid environment, and also like data tracking for students with IEPs, for students who are in an RTI program, AIS services, the ability to assess students and track data with those students and able to support them when they're here in front of you. It looks differently. And I think that that's certainly a pro of having any face-to-face contact time with them. One of the cons of the hybrid model is inconsistency. We know that some of our students, especially those who struggle with routines in the first place, switching those routines is always very complicated for them. We know that childcare and childcare routines for families is a con when you're switching in a hybrid model. We know that one of the cons of a hybrid model, especially the AA, Wednesday, BB on Thursday, Friday, left a 5-day gap of the in-person instruction. But what we tried to do was we tried to create it in a way that every teacher was able to see their students, whether they were in person with them or not on those days, even when they were at home. So we tried to kind of mitigate for that 5-day gap of instruction the way that we structured the hybrid schedule. So even like the in-person teachers were seeing the students at home in the afternoon kind of thing, or at the middle and high school, they were able to stream with their students at different times during the day. In terms of remote, the pros were that we could create a consistent schedule. It was safe. There was no risk of transmission. We could potentially create synchronous instructional models, and that there was no FaceTime with students. Students can interact with their friends in person. Childcare for families is going to be an issue. And one of the issues that we also talked about is we had attendance issues for some that were in maybe daycare or were at, you know, grandma's house that didn't necessarily have the technological skills to be able to help them. And one of the other things that was a very global concern is that there was an overall reduction in the report of child abuse cases. Then this is a very global concern. So this is nothing related to Millbrook, but we know with the types of stressors that exist in an environment like this, where many families were having reduced income, people lost their jobs, the economy, you know, took a hit. We don't imagine that there was a reduced number of cases of child abuse, but we know that there was a reduce in the reporting of child abuse. So there's lots of concerns that go along with that. And many students across the state of New York fell off the radar. School districts across New York State lost track of them. So remote environments are concerns, period. Millbrook did a very good job of keeping track of their students, but it's a concern. Remote environments are a concern in general.
Caroline, if one question for you. Didn't I believe I read someplace that the IEP and 504s, the parents can insist on having them brought to school 5 days a week? Is that true?
I did not read that. I did not read that.
Okay, because I did run across that, so you would just check into it for your own knowledge.
The other thing to pay attention to is, remember, hybrid is 3 out of 5 days is remote. So, you know, all the things that we point out, students can't interact with their friends. They can't see their friends Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday when it's on that week. So, you know, and by the way, they're leaving at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so they're not seeing their friends from 1 o'clock on. You know, hybrid is not giving them, you know, constant FaceTime.
But Perry, it's giving them something. It's giving them something just because it's
Well,
not, you know, every
but
day.
how,
doing
but
something.
how many of our kids, you know, are with their friends anyway? You know, I mean, there are a lot of kids, especially when you trust, you know, it's one thing to be with your friends that you know where the parents have been, where the kids have been, and, you know, still doing the social distancing still, but, you know, sticking them in a classroom where they might be split into a different room, they're going to be told they can't walk together, that, you know, no high, I mean, it just, I don't know. Anyway, I didn't mean to like go down that
Well,
rabbit hole.
Perry, you're absolutely correct. I stated that last night, that our usual world is not gonna. They're not gonna be going to lockers together. They're not sitting in the cafeteria hanging out. It's not gonna be like, you know, you might have kids come in. I don't care where it is, Millbrook, wherever, whatever district, thinking and visualizing one thing, and then saying, you know what, I don't want to do this like this.
Paul, these kids have not had normalcy since March. So them going into the school is not going to be, you know, yes, is it going to be different for the first few days? Absolutely. But over time, people get used to new things. So for to say that, you know, oh, it's going to be new, it's going to be new, it's going to be new, and they're not going to, you know, they're not going to like it, or it's going to be different to them, they will get used to it. It's just like them going to school for the first day. If it's a new student going into the high school, the first few days, they're out of their element, things are so different to them. But you know what? After a week, it becomes normal. It becomes, you know, an everyday occurrence for them.
What about after a week if we have to shut down again?
Huh?
So what about in a week if we have to shut down again? What impact is that on the student after we just brought him back? I'm just playing devil's advocate to Claudia's point. I mean, it's I get what you're saying, but there's no guarantee it's going to last a day, a week, or a month. You know, and then you're pulling the rug out of the students. You know, just.
I think it would be a lot.
If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. I mean, if it gets shut down, then everybody gets shut down. And again, we all adjust. It may not be good for the first few days, but eventually it will.
All right, so why don't we let these guys finish up, and then what I'd like to do is we'll go sort of like a straw poll of the board members of, you know, and again, this is not, you know, the entire 2020, 2021 school year is going to be this way. This is us giving them direction on how to start the first, you know, in September. You know, we were just talking, Wappingers just said that they're fully remote, but only until October, then they'll reassess. You know, this is do we have everybody go full tilt to put together a hybrid structure, curriculum, support staff, you know, whatever is necessary, or do we have them focus on remote? So, you know, that day one it's remote, we can always switch to hybrid, and you know, we're not at risk of going back to remote. We need to give the district direction on what to do next, because there's still a ton of unanswered questions, including some of the legal questions that I think go away if you're talking about remote, but there's still legal questions that have to be answered. So,
and even some of those are not answered, because we've asked legal a number of questions, because this hasn't existed. So even to look back in history for law or guidance, it's very difficult. So they have that frustration as well, as sort of living in the now and trying to figure it out.
So I'd like to, let these guys finish up, and then I'd like to do, a bastardized version of a straw poll. What's your opinion of these options, and what is your take, or what's your vote? And then because either way, we need a motion that is specific to one of these two. So. So back to you, Caroline.
Yeah, Elliot, I need you to advance the slides. So as per the governor's most recent announcement, we need to schedule at least 3 parent and community virtual meetings. And we need to schedule at least 1 staff meeting, and that's prior to next Friday. And then we'll need to post 3 plans that need to be finalized by that date as well. A plan for addressing COVID-19 testing of students and employees, contact tracing, which is in the event of a confirmed case of infection within the school community. How would we trace back who that person may have been in contact with? So that's going to be a challenge, right? So that's within the school day, who that person may have been in contact with would be very manageable, because we'll be able to know based on cohort and groupings, bus routes, and our management of students within the building. We should be able to do that fairly seamlessly. However, we don't know what students do outside of the building. And then we will be able to post a plan of how remote instruction will be delivered on any given day that remote instruction is part of our plan. Our reentry teams and subcommittees worked incredibly hard in order to develop and ensure that we're ready for whatever pivoting we may have to do throughout this fall. So I just want to thank you for your time and for your consideration of whatever it is that you choose to allow us to begin the 2020-2021 school year with. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think I speak for the board in thanking everyone for the amount of work that had to go into this, the amount of, just complete off the wall thinking about what if. This is not by any stretch an easy analysis, an easy set of recommendations, or an easy decision. But I think we all appreciate all of the time that everybody put into doing this. All right, whoops. So there's nothing else. I'd like to go around the board.
Perry, I do have a question before you go around, because it's a question that I'd like to ask.
Okay.
If we go to, if it is decided that there is 100% remote learning, the teachers, they're going to be in school during the day from 8 to whatever the time is, 7:45, whatever it is, to 3 o'clock. They're not going to be doing their teaching from home. They're going to be doing it in a structured classroom. Yes, no. And also the other question is, I want to go back to the children that have, if we do this remote learning, the children with the IEPs, how is that going to look for those parents? What more can be said? What more can we do for these children that have the IEPs? If that can be, if that could be a thought and question answered.
Yeah, so the guidance is very clear that we have to prioritize those students. I certainly would like to see some more thought put into how we can have related services provided in person, especially in the area of like OT and PT. It was certainly a challenge for them to be able to deliver those at a distance. I would like to be able to deliver speech services in person as well. I think to the degree that we would be able to have services provided in person for special education students, we would like to be able to do that. But if we decide to go remotely because that's what we feel we need to do now, I don't know that we can say, except for our special education students who can come into the building. Because if we're saying that we can't do that for whatever the reason is, I don't know that we can say, but it's okay for our special education students to come in.
Right, and I understand that, but you know, the parents, you know, the teachers are taught how to teach a child with a disability. You know, parents can only do so much. So what are we going to do for those parents that have these children with these disabilities? You know, it's a concern. And I don't know if it's, you know, if it's a state thing, is it our thing? Is there something that we can do? Is it something that can be discussed? You know, I don't even know what any more questions to ask besides that. You know, and again, I want to, you know, go back to the teachers. I want to get clarification on that, because I'm sure the teachers and the students are want to know that, you know, the teachers are going to be in the classroom. So, you know, there's not a distraction at home with, you know, the dog being let out, the laundry being done, whatever it is. You know, if the teachers have a full day instruction, they're in the classroom, this is where the teachers can be reached, and they're in during the day. Is that something that's been thought of? Is that something that's on the board? Is that something that's feasible, not feasible?
Well, I think we have to give directive first as a board before that decision is totally made. It's a good question. It's a question that can't be answered until the next part of the conversation is had. It also has to do with bargaining units and our attorneys as well.
Yeah, I think that it's really,
teachers are people too, and they have the right to be safe. Okay.
I mean, I think it's really two parts, Claudia. The one, you know, if we were to decide virtual, you know, it's sort of the next decision of, all right, so where are the teachers virtualing from, right? I mean, there's probably no reason they couldn't go to the classrooms and do it, because even the tech is better there. You know, they've got more capabilities, even, you know, without the students there. You still have the ability to use scanners and printers and smart boards, things that they don't have at home. So to me, that's one decision. The second part of that is really a bigger, much longer discussion, I think, on special ed, because, you know, it's not just, you know, you can't, it's not a cookie cutter. You can't say this is the way we're doing special ed, because everyone is different. Everyone, you know, they might not even need to go to Millbrook because they go someplace else. But I think that needs to be done student by student. Same thing. I mean, I don't think that's any different than if we go back in a hybrid. We still have to decide student by student what, you know, what each student, how we're going to handle each student. And I'm, you know, I keep looking for Caroline to shake her head yes that I did it right.
And Claudia, too, there might be teachers that can't return to work. And so if they can't return to work, they can work from home as long as they have documentation. And that goes back to what John Rudy was asking about. Have we surveyed the staff and see, you know, to help us schedule and plan for the future?
Yeah, and you know, I hope that our staff, and I do believe this, being in Millbrook for as long as I have been and being on a board for 7 years, we have outstanding professional staff. And for anyone to intimate that they're doing laundry or taking care of their dog when they're teaching our kids, I think is highly offensive.
Now, John, that is absolutely offensive. What you did, Paul? Sorry, Paul. That is absolutely offensive to me that you would say something like that. That's not.
That's how it came. That's how it came out.
It's a distraction. It's a distraction, Paul, and you just took it to a next level.
What's a distraction?
It's just, Paul, I'm not doing it now.
People are professional and they're home in an office space or an area like we're supposed to be when we're doing this type of stuff. It's, you know, it'll work. You know, we just have to get better at maybe doing it or improving that. I'm saying to you, the way it was said, maybe you didn't mean it like that. That's the way it came out to me, to be honest with you.
I apologize, Paul, for saying it like that. That's not how I meant it. That is absolutely not.
And I'm not going to sit here as a teacher or an
thank you.
administrator and let it be said without commenting on
Okay.
it.
All right. Guys, all right. So why don't we, unless anybody else has got anything to add. Why don't we start, Paul? We might as well start with you. What's your take on, starting the year hybrid, starting the year virtual, and sort of why?
Well, you summarized it, Perry, before very well, and I appreciate that. I would say start off virtual and see where we go, at least for a marking period of the first few months, and see where we are in October. I'm really concerned about people coming back from vacations, not quarantining, and having traveled and gotten a little looser with restrictions. And by the end of September or October, we could see some rise in it, and I think that gives us some time. I think that the work that's been done has been yeoman's work by everybody, from Laura on down. All of her central office, the committees that we were all part of, did a great job. But it's just, to be honest with you, I do have concerns with this current model about, kids going home early or the day ending too early. That was my biggest concern tonight, to be honest with you. And we're a smaller school district with space that I think we have space compared to some other districts that don't. And I just don't know if we're at the most efficient level with our space usage right now in these models as well. So I would be to go hybrid, at least, if not for half the year. The first. The other thing is the vaccine, and other things could happen as of December that might be able to give us a better indication. So I'm saying, go virtual.
Claudia, you want to go next?
Wait, can I just clarify? Is Paul saying we go all virtual or hybrid? You said both virtual and
all
hybrid.
virtual. All virtual.
Okay.
Claudia?
I say hybrid.
Okay. And why?
I think the kids need to go to school. I think they need the structure. I think they need the instruction. They need to face-to-face contact with the teacher. They need to get out. The kids want to be with kids. They need to go.
Okay. Howard?
I would love for things to be normal, what they're not. I would love for to try a hybrid, but there's too many unknowns at this time. And I think if we would go maybe a month virtual and to reassess during that month to and then at least find out how many more staff we need, how many monitors. There's just a cost involved to the taxpayer that especially in this environment with people either not working or making a lot less money than they were making, that, and with the governor still threatening a 20% cut to the school district's budget, that we need to reassess to see how much exactly this is going to cost us. And if the virus does not come back as we get to fall, and it's not just this virus, medical professionals are saying that the flu season is going to ramp up within the next month or so, as soon as kids get together. So I have to say virtual at this point for reassessment on all different levels.
Okay. John? John?
Oh, John. That's me. So I'm kind of on board with where Howard is. Little different for little different reasons. First of all, we're not sure what's going to happen. I kind of like the idea of stepping into this in a safe manner, where we sit back, do virtual for the maybe first 3 weeks. Let's see what happens to other districts, perhaps, although we can see it nationally, perhaps better. But I would say we should be conditionally moving toward hybrid to have it. We're going to need hybrid. If it's not this year, if it's not this fall, I think we're going to need something like this. We're going to need these things, some of this knowledge for when we do want to get back to going to school again. So I think the work we do between now and whenever we use hybrid will be valuable. But the concerns I have are liability questions. We need some things answered. if things can't be answered, then it's just, to me, it's, I'm not a person that likes just jumping in and hoping for the best. I mean, sometimes bad things happen, unexpected things. I think it's responsible to kind of know, have some people weigh in on the possibilities of what could happen. So that's one reason. From what I see, there is with the hybrid plan, there's 2 days a week of let's compare this to let's compare this to last year opening. You have 2 days, if it was even full, 2 days of 5, that's 40%. And we're hearing that the day has been reduced. So maybe it's a 25% equivalent, and we don't know the cost yet for these things. And I think we do, it would be worthwhile, like I said to begin with, it would be worthwhile still going down that road trying to do some estimates. So there's a cost, a bang for the buck. And, but the other thing I want to point out is, let's see, was structural day cost. Just to understand in the coming weeks about testing and about how the county plugs into this with readiness, how we're dealing with adherence, which Harry brought up, buses, things like that. I think we have some work to do there. And that was kind of it. So yeah, I kind of see maybe a initial delay while we work on the hybrid. And I think the hybrid, if it's not going to be used in the fall, it will be used some other time.
Chris?
Right.
I'll start with saying, I don't think anybody here doesn't want school to open. I mean, doesn't want the students to get together and the teachers to see the students, but when you look at the stats in the past 4 weeks, there was a 90% increase in positive cases in children, which is 180,000. I think it's 500,000 total now. You're seeing an increase. And I think it's mainly because a lot of our children were quarantined more than anyone right from the start. So really nobody knew how susceptible they were to the virus. So there's a lot of questions around students. And, the way I look at it is safety of our students and staff should guide our decision. I know it's not going to make a lot of parents happy with scheduling and everything else, but to me, as a father and a board member, safety comes first. We got to look out for our staff and our students. So I would recommend a 6-week remote and reassess in 4 weeks. I think 3 weeks is too short to kind of pivot back. At least the month of September. But, numerous local schools already decided to start remote. They've already made it public. I think we should follow suit with it. I just think it's the safest thing. And like I said before, I want nothing more than my kids to be back with their friends. But, at what cost? And like I mentioned before, what environment are we bringing them into? As far as a pro and a con, you bring them back into a hybrid. They're going to be basically sitting in a chair for 7 hours, staring straight forward with a mask on. That's not really an environment of, bringing up emotions and happiness. So I would rather take the safety route and wait it out a bit and then go into hybrid. But, I can honestly say, being on the committees, everyone on the committees, all the staff, the parents that were involved, it was an amazing experience to go through. And I do think it's going to be important because, after this interim, we'll slide right into it. So that's my decision.
Good. Thanks, Chris. Jen, wherever you are. Oh, there.
Did you say wherever I am?
Yeah, no, I was looking for you in my Hollywood squares of people.
I definitely think it should be a hybrid. I think these kids have to get back to school. To a couple points, like if my daughter was an A student, she'd be in class 2 days a week. That's it. So it's only 2 days and it's a shortened day. So that's not really a lot of time in school. I think based on the surveys, I feel like a lot of the parents do want that. I think that's the majority opinion. And I find that, if I trust the administration that, I wanted them to go back full-time 5 days a week, but if that got rejected, then it's for good cause. I wasn't in all those meetings. I'm not privy to that information, but there's got to be good reason that, all our committees voted for not, the K through 5 or K through 8 full-time and then everyone else remote. So I think that if, if they have confidence in the plan of hybrid, to me, and I understand there's going to be kids who aren't going to wear masks and are going to touch and this and that, but I know that there is data out there about some, across the world, kids going back to school and the rates of the kids getting it and bringing it home. And it's not, I don't know the exact statistics. I was talking to a doctor who basically said that there's other countries that are sending their kids to school. They have kids in school and it's not being brought home and transmitted and all of this. And I just think that, yes, it will be a learning curve. The kids can go back for like the first 2 days and we're going to find out we have to do this, and adjust this and put this person here. But, between the mold and the pandemic and everything else that's going on, we've shown that we're, pretty good at overcoming some adversity. I know I personally, as a parent, my daughter is very much looking forward to going back to school, and the whole work thing, like as a parent, I work full time, and I think they need it. I think the kids need it. And I think the parents that have kids in this school, especially in those younger grades, I think they want them to go back, a lot of them.
And, oh yeah, me. I'll echo what the rest of the board has said. I mean, I would like nothing more than to put the kids back into school full time. That, there's no virtual, there's no hybrid. They just go back to being kids and learning. But when I look at first of all, the statistics, Chris brought up one. We in the US, which is one of the reasons, I don't pay too much attention to sort of the success of other countries. The US, we went from 4 to 5 million cases in less than a month. And, 5 million people out there that have tested positive are now, raring to give it away. I think our job is to balance the finance, to balance the scholastics, and to balance the safety and security of our kids. And I don't see any way, personally, that we can even begin to keep our kids safe and get something out of it. I mean, we're talking about, as John said, a day and a half of in-face, and everything else is riding on buses and working from home, and and being in a classroom where I'm assuming we're going to treat teachers like we treat nurses. We're going to give them face shields, we're going to give them gowns, we're going to give them gloves, and then the kid's going to sit in that room looking at that for 7 hours a day. To me, it doesn't buy anything that's worth the risk to our kids, and even more to our parents, our grandparents, and our staff. You got to remember that these kids are, go home contaminated to grandma's house, and now we're not just looking at somebody that tests positive. I really don't think that if we do a hybrid, that we can just handle it internally. I mean, I can't, maybe we double up the hours of the CSEA, but do we really want our CSEA folks, out there badgering kids about social distancing and wearing their mask and all that stuff? These kids haven't seen each other, which has been brought up a number of times, and they're going to be all over each other. I mean, the first thing I do when I see my friends is I start to reach out to do, high five, a hand, shake a hand, pull it back quickly because I know better. But I don't see the value to starting the year hybrid. Starting the year hybrid. I do like the idea of laying out a multi-dimensional plan that says, you know what, you're right. The seniors, juniors, and seniors, we should let them have a school experience one way or another before they leave. And we can, sit them all down, and maybe that's the first thing we bring back. Or maybe it's K to 5. I really worry about the little kids more than I worry about the high schoolers, because they, somebody walks in with a panda mask on and somebody else goes, oh, let me see. And next thing you know, they're wearing the other kid's mask. So I know all the thought and all the work that went into this, trying to come up with the best possible solution. I really think this whole thing is going to blow up again. And before Halloween, we're out. I do, however, one sort of condition, even though I can't put conditions on it, is that whole discussion about the positives of not doing hybrid. We can't tell whether the kids have been there. We can't tell if they've submitted their assignments. The grading isn't going the way it's supposed to. We've got that schedule that's laid out for hybrid could easily be the schedule that's used for virtual. 9 o'clock is math. Teachers there, kids are there, report who's not there, who turns in their assignments, who doesn't turn in their assignments. There's no reason that, again, we can't just think of virtual as what we did in March of 2020, because we had no choice. We got the door slammed on us. But I think by making a decision now, giving you guys like the go figure this out, lay out the first 60 days or the first, to the end of December, and say, we really could get these, K-5 back in if we did this, this, and this. We need 12 other monitors. We need a teacher aide in every room to keep the kids apart. We need, maybe we don't need, I don't know, putting together these plans by principal, really I'll call it by school. So you got K-5 and middle school, high school. And then, if one of them looks like it'll really play, like the juniors and seniors, because we want them to have that experience before they leave us, maybe maybe that can be implemented October 1st. But to try to do it out of the chute, I just don't see it. So I'm voting virtual. All right, I think did I get everybody?
So Perry, some clarity here. So there's been a few different ideas of how long virtual, some all virtual, some, where's this going? How long a period are we talking about?
Well, I don't think that we know that yet, John. The whole point now is to say we're going to start virtual, and then for Laura and Caroline and Brian and the principals and teachers to say, look, we could do the 4th grade because it's only got 25 kids in it or 40 kids or whatever.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is priorities. Is it more important to start perfecting remote education or continue working on a hybrid? Because you probably can't do both well.
If we're going to start with remote or virtual, to me, that's the first thing you work on, because, even if we were in a hybrid, and they shut the door on us in October, if we have a fully developed plan for remote, we just roll into that plan. So to me, that's the plan. It's not just a one size fits all. Here's the math teacher teaches math. It's each grade. It's almost, I think the bigger sort of changes to me is at the K-5, because they're sort of not used to having like a schedule like the high school kids do, and it's almost got to be that. It's got to, so that exactly when those kids are going to be there. But again, I think that's the plan that needs to be worked through between now and opening day, or now and maybe we even push opening day a week. I think we're told that 180 doesn't count. I don't know if that's true or not, but maybe we have to take the first 5 days and make them superintendent days so that we can continue to work on it. But
And that's, we can change our calendar, in which we have spoken with the MTA and each other, and that would be very beneficial for us in preparation for whatever scenario that we're going into. So now we're going into remote. That would be very helpful to do training and to start curriculum design. And we are still beholden to the only 4, but we can, for the 4 superintendent conference days. I spoke with legal today. There is talk that they might be increased to 6, but that's still in discussion. But there are also other opportunities that we've built into the days of the hybrid, where there is professional development, so we can work on things. We can also do push out days like we did during the Memorial Day weekend, and maybe some early dismissal, late arrival, early dismissals, virtual.
Okay.
That we can build in to build exactly what you're talking about. And the hybrid work that we did is not for naught. You know, it was good. It's good work. We're going to use it. And we can use some of the ideas and some of the templates and use that to inform remote. So it's all just really good work. And the time is welcomed.
Yeah, and there's no, I mean, there's no easy answer to, you know, I started this, almost 3 hours ago, saying there's no easy answer. There's no right answer. There's the most safe, there's the most, you know, socially acceptable, there's the most academic. What we have to do is try to balance it and do the best we can. And I think we've all done that. So Cheryl, do we have a motion?
Barry, can I say one thing before we close up?
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I think a lot of the answers in the polls were swayed with the overall confidence level of our remote learning.
Yeah.
And we all know that was thrown together and it was a fire drill, and everybody has had a different experience. But I think it's up to us now to quickly build that confidence up with parents to say, no, it's not going to be like it was at the end of the year. You know, here's the plan in detail, you know, as quick as we can, because, you know, really the school starts a few weeks away. So.
Well, Chris, that point is well taken too. Instead of running around like crazy people trying to open just to have people come in, which, you know, is not the answer, is to just do what you said. Let's put all our eggs in this basket now of improving that instruction and starting off with that. I agree. It's a great point. I'm glad you brought it up. Thank you.
And I think just with the work that has been accomplished, you can see that there's routine, there are schedules, and there's a robust curriculum being built. So we heard it loud and clear. We didn't have the time. Like Steve always says, we were in triage. Now we're doing surgery. So you're absolutely right. Now we need to provide our students with the quality education that they deserve in a safe and healthy environment. So that's where we're moving towards.
And I think the next thing that we need to clearly define is what will be the trigger for when we pivot into a hybrid model. So once we establish what our remote environment will look like, we need to start creating sort of the checklist of our triggers for when we will actually consider pivoting towards a hybrid model, when we can start getting students back into a face-to-face learning environment, because that kind of becomes the next question. So when do we become hybrid? When do we start transitioning students back to school? So
the one thing I'll warn you about, Caroline, is I don't want this remote plan or virtual plan to be, it's only got to last a couple weeks. So
no,
we need to put everything we have into developing a virtual plan, because it may end up the only plan. Yep. You know, if before we can get back to a hybrid, they shut us down, who knows? So just be careful about all right, so how quickly can we get out of this as our first priority? Because I think our first priority is how do we make this work as good, if not better, than, you know, in class. I know it won't deal with the social aspects of it, and it won't deal with the, you know, sort of one-on-ones with the teachers. But how are we going to make this work like school is intended to work? And then we can figure out, you know, because it's up to us as to how quickly we jump out of this.
Yeah.
Right. You know, if we have the remote thing and it's cruising and everything's great, we spend some time on the hybrid, you know, if we get all that done in a week, hey, but if not, we focus on getting, so we run remote through November, or we run remote till Thanksgiving and then come back, I don't know. But we really need to put all of our focus on making this thing just like school, without people. So Cheryl, do you have
Perry, wait a second. Wait, I'd like to say something. First, I'd like to say I am absolutely sorry to any teacher that I may have offended out there, because that was not my intention at all. I am a field-based representative, and my office is my car, and I know what a distraction. My house, I've tried to use my office as an office, and it just doesn't work. And I'm going to give you an example. The other day I went out to my car. I let my kids know that I was going to my car because I had to go on a virtual call with a client and my manager. And I let them know, I said, please, half an hour, just give me half an hour, just leave me. Within 10 minutes, I had them standing at the door of my car, knocking on the window. So I'm just saying that there are distractions. That's all that I meant by it. I 100% apologize if I disrespected, if you feel disrespected at all.
Well, if you had left the pizza in the kitchen, they wouldn't have come out and bothered you.
Thank you, Claudia.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So, and I'm not asking for a motion to close the meeting. We need a motion to make our straw poll official. That's the
So
motion
Perry,
I was looking for.
I just want to add to that, because the resolution that Margot sent over she did include in there that she thought it was important to say effective September through. So if we're going to give it through September, noting that we can extend that it's probable that we will extend it, but that way it gives us that focused time period of that. So I just want to put that out there, that the way that she sent it, we're looking for a, September through whatever.
Well, it also doesn't stop us
extension.
from shortening it up if we had, we could always go back and
Right.
shorten it. So, I would say, and I'll throw it out to the board, I would say through October. And I think that's what Wappingers just said when they said they were going virtual.
Yeah.
And then if we extend it, great. If we don't, because I also don't think the hybrid's going to be, all right, flip the switch, the entire district's now hybrid. It's going to be, we're going to do this school, we're going to do this grade, we're going to do this class. I would say through October, unless somebody on the board has an issue with it.
Are you saying through the end of October, Perry? Or
Yeah.
Just asking, making sure.
Yep. Okay, so Cheryl, you want to read that one to me?
So be it resolved, well, do you want to take your motion and then I'll read it?
Well, don't we need to know what we're motioning?
All right, yeah. Yes, right. I'm tired.
I know how to make motions, but you don't usually like to see those.
Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools that the Board of Education hereby approves the following education program methodology effective September 2020, remote only through October 2020, subject to extension based on Department of Health. Based on the Department of Health.
Okay.
That's.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a motion?
I'll motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. I'd like to go around just so everybody gets their sort of ability to say their piece. So, Paul?
Virtual, yes.
Yes. Okay. Claudia?
Hybrid.
Well, it's yes or no.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you were muted.
You muted, Claudia.
No, I'm not.
You were.
Oh, you were for a second.
We couldn't hear you.
Can you just go to the next person?
Okay, so no. Howard?
So.
Yeah.
So
Yes
virtual.
vote is.
Yes vote for virtual.
Yeah. Okay. John?
Yes, it's virtual. I do want to make. Can I make a little statement here? That's something I neglected.
Okay.
I read the there was a survey that we were given that ended in, I think it was dated in June, end of June. And I read all the comments. It took quite a while. What hit me was two major things came out of that. First, which the last survey covered too. There's a lot of people that really, they really would like to get their kids back to school. And believe me, I really feel that as a parent. I get it. I mean, there were some folks that had despair in their comments. You know, I'm hanging on here. So I really feel for them. I know this is potentially unpopular, but we're trying to do the right thing, balancing everything. The other thing too is our staff. There was a lot of, I mean, it came out very loud and strong that the staff was very well appreciated about from March till June, how much the kind of outreach they did and making it easy to communicate with them. So I like the parents, and I just want to make a note of that everybody was appreciative. Great going. Thank you very much, everybody, for making that.
Thank you, John. Chris?
Virtual, yes.
Jen?
No.
Okay. And Perry's yes. Okay. Carries 5-2. Is there anything else on the agenda? I hope not.
Well, Perry, is the board open to revising the calendar so that we can front load our superintendent conference days? So that would mean that instead of students virtual teaching and learning wouldn't happen on the 9th, it would begin on the 14th, Monday, the 14th.
Okay. Well,
we'll bring that to the board if you're open to it as a unit.
I don't see why not. I mean, I'll put it out to the rest of the board, but it makes total sense to me. You need as much working time as possible. Anybody on the board have, I mean, we'll have to see it at next, I mean, we have a meeting next week, so.
Okay, we'll prepare it.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
If you can consider one thing, once we start the remote, there's a lot of kids that are transitioning into, you know, whether it be Elm to Alden or Alden to Middle. If there's a way in the first day or two, maybe you can have both teachers on the call for the younger ones, really just to kind of introduce them, since it's going to be a virtual thing, just a handoff, because I think it's going to be, you know, they didn't get introduced to the new school. I just think that would be a nice thing to do for the younger kids.
Yeah, same thing with the kindergarten kids. I mean, you know, maybe even have the teacher show them around the room. I mean, it's hopefully they're going back, you know, this isn't like their entire kindergarten, but you're right, Chris. I mean, anybody that's transitioning should get some sort of attention. Okay. Anything else?
I just want to say thank you. This is a good conversation, and this is what we do as a community. We grapple with things and we try to make the best decisions for kids. So I just appreciated the process and appreciate the board. You know, sometimes we have to make unpopular decisions for some, and it's a celebration for others. So thank you. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for working so closely with the community and parents. It's obvious that you have great care for all who are going to be impacted by this. So much appreciated.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any against? All right, we're done before, well, I was gonna say we're done before 10 o'clock, but took a shot.
Almost.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Right,
Good night.
Thanks all the administrators. Thanks everybody for putting everything together. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Good night, everybody.
Take care.
Night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Wow.
Hey, guys.
Well,
Oh,
hello
wait,
there.
hold on. Let me stop recording.
It still says live on YouTube.
I know. Hold on.